Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening. How could they allow civilians to enter and exit freely? St. Topman Warcurry took a sip of coffee to moisten his throat and said, "This matter is a bit too far off. Let's talk about the current matters." That guy agreed. Oh? Although what he said was ambiguous. But the 4 people who often gathered could instantly understand the meaning. St. Jaga Ursha Saturn, who was in charge of the judiciary, nodded. "Indeed, we have already started processing his release procedures here." "How did you persuade him?" St. Marcus Mars tugged at his beard and looked over curiously, only to hear St. Shepherd Jupiter beside him chuckle. "We found that guy's older brother." "So that's it." The former suddenly understood, but then heard the latter look at him and say, "But we also promised to treat his older brother's body, which will require your medical academy to handle." "What, is his older brother sick? Or injured?" St. Shepherd Jupiter chuckled softly. "He was born with a weak constitution and muscle weakness. It feels like a difficult illness. I really didn't expect such a strong guy to have this kind of older brother." St. Marcus Mars said, looking at him in surprise. "Perhaps he snatched his older brother's nutrition in the womb. But this is a good thing for us, and it's easier to control him." St. Jaga Ursha Saturn interjected from the side. "Looking at it this way, your army is about to gain another admiral." St. Marcus Mars nodded and then smiled at St. Jaga Ursha Saturn. "Humphrey, that's not certain yet." "Why?" "With his strength, becoming an admiral shouldn't be a problem, right? Or did the 6 years in Impel Down weaken him a lot?" St. Topman Warcurry asked. "I don't know if he's become weaker, but becoming an admiral requires sufficient military merit. Where would he get that? This old man thinks it's better to let him be a vice admiral first." St. Jaga Ursha Saturn's stern, unsmiling expression showed that he was serious, but his words raised questions from the others. "Isn't it inappropriate for that guy to be a vice admiral with his strength? Even the current Sakazuki might not be his opponent. Doesn't your military prioritize the strongest? But ultimately, he has a pirate origin, and he hasn't achieved any military merit. Directly granting him the admiral rank, this old man thinks it's improper." St. Jaga Ursha Saturn still stuck to his opinion, and on this point, the others had no authority to interfere at all. Of course, they were just chatting casually. "In that case, let's just give him a chance to achieve great merit." At this moment, St. Shepherd Jupiter said meaningfully. St. Jaga Ursha Saturn, wearing round glasses, glanced over with his gaze. This is what I'm thinking. How about letting him go with?" At the same time, just as the night was deep and quiet, in the infinite hell of Impel Down beneath the seabed, another figure, whose body size was far greater than that of ordinary people, slowly left following behind Magellan. "Damn it. Even that guy can get out? What exactly is the world government trying to do?" Golden Lion Shiki cursed angrily through gritted teeth, sensing the aura of the 2 getting further and further away. But as the 2 completely disappeared on the large elevator, he sat back on the stone platform helplessly and thought to himself. Thinking about it carefully, if those guys really came to this old man and wanted me to exchange freedom for submission, would I agree? No. How could that be? I am Golden Lion Shiki. You want me to be a dog for the world government? I'd rather wither and die here. At least I can preserve the reputation of the flying pirates on the seas. For someone like him, the moment he submits, his belief will collapse, and his hockey will be directly rendered useless. For Shiki, who was extremely arrogant, even Goldie Roger was only fit to be his vice-captain, not an equal ally. Ever since he witnessed Rock's might and left the Rock's pirates, he only wanted to be the boss, and was only willing to be the boss. He would absolutely never be someone's subordinate again. However, 10 minutes later, the Magellan who had just left returned, but this time he was followed by 4 people, and they arrived outside Shiki's prison cell. This stunned Golden Lion Shiki inside. He watched silently as the cell door was slowly opened, and then a guy in a suit walked in. At the same time, The man in black standing outside the cell door released a light purple light barrier, isolating all sound from here. "Hello, Mr. Shiki, captain of the Flying Pirates. I heard you really want to get out of here?" Shiki sat cross-legged on the stone platform, looked at the government official with a fake smile on his face, and said coldly, "I do want to, but if it means I have to take orders from you, then I'm quite happy to retire here." "Hee, I believe you won't be so insistent after you see what's next." The man in black looked confidently at this great pirate who once dominated the four seas, because he didn't believe anyone could withstand the temptation of the multiverse. Soon, he took out a visual den-den-mushi and projected a virtual screen. Then, just like when he persuaded Kaido before, he began introducing matters about the Kabanrai world and the Stargate, while appreciating the increasingly obvious shock on Shiki's expression. So that's how it is. Golden Lion Shiki was indeed very astonished and instantly understood the various strange phenomena from before. So those guys were tempted by this other world and accepted the world government's recruitment. At this moment, the man in black spoke with a tempting tone. "Mr. Shiki, the world government is now preparing to form a military branch called the Air Force. It is said to be a new type of troops responsible for aerial combat. As long as you are willing to sincerely join, the position of Air Force Admiral will be yours. It's even possible that you could become the Air Force Marshal in the future. Think about it, instead of growing old and dying in this dark and sunless impel down, wouldn't it be better to lead the Air Force Army and soar through the sky of other worlds?" Finishing move. He brought out his finishing move. As expected, Golden Lion Shiki fell into a long silence. Although his expression was blank, his trembling gaze revealed the struggle and conflict in his heart. This made the smile on the man in black's face become even more intense, until it suddenly stiffened after the other party spoke his first sentence. He couldn't believe it. He dug at his ears and said in surprise, "Could you please say that again?" "I refuse." Golden Lion Shiki repeated through gritted teeth. His pale fingers had already cracked the stone platform beneath him, and this was even under sea stone suppression. "You puny multiverse wants me to submit? Dream on. I am Golden Lion." Boom! Suddenly, a surging dark golden air current erupted from Shiki's body. His conqueror's haki was released without restraint. At the same time, his roar, like a lion king's fury, echoed within the dark prison cell. But unfortunately, it was still blocked by that layer of purple light barrier. "Is that so?" The smile on the man in black's face instantly turned cold. His gaze flickered with annoyance. "In that case, we'll just have to use extraordinary measures to make you obey." Immediately after, he angrily closed the transponder snail and walked out of the prison cell. Just as Shiki was panting heavily, thinking the matter was over and his life was ending like this, another figure walked in. And this person was not wearing a black suit, but a beige prison guard uniform. Seeing this person appear, Shiki's expression suddenly changed drastically. "It's you." "Heh." The newcomer didn't speak, but the cold laughter was particularly chilling. The next moment, the green collar on Golden Lion Shiki's neck emitted a bright radiance, illuminating this dark stonewall prison cell. No. Chapter 233, Otherworld Fiery Clouds, Icy Land Aurora. Thump, 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 a series of heart-shaking footsteps approached from far away. Those familiar with this sound could immediately tell it was the sound of the Army's latest configuration of tall leather boots stepping on the ground. At the Stargate base of number 0001 Kabanrai World, the entire steel gate was completely wide open. Senior Director O'Connor, who was in charge of managing this place, was leading 4 subordinate officials, also dressed in suits and leather shoes, gazing towards the other end of the red ground. A battalion of soldiers appeared, all dressed in black, with black boots, black guns, and black sheathed long sabers at their waists. Their neat footsteps seemed to make the red ground tremble slightly. Even the personnel from various departments who hadn't come out of the base could clearly feel a strong sense of oppression. Is this the aura of 20,000 army soldiers? Senior Director Oniken stood with his hands behind his back, watching the approaching army. His mood was also inexplicably affected, becoming stirred. He had received notification from the higher-ups that, in order to facilitate the comprehensive development by subsequent administrative personnel, technicians, and laborers, the Army headquarters would dispatch 20,000 military strength to the Kabanrai world. Lieutenant General Douglas Barrett would lead them to clear out the Kabanrai world within Hinamoto, occupying all large and small stations and important mineral vein resources. Adding the 7,000 soldiers already there, the Kabanrai world was about to face the conquest of nearly 30,000 army troops. It will take who knows how long to send so many people over. One division-level official also sighed with emotion. One must know, when people number in the tens of thousands, they are boundless. What's more, these were 20,000 fully armed soldiers. Just the scale of the vermilion dust kicked up in the distance was enough to inspire awe. The width of the small stargate was only 2 meters, at most allowing 2 people to enter side by side. But for those with larger body sizes, only one could pass at a time. Compared to the time, is there enough disinfectant spray at the biochemical safety station? Senior Director O'Connor turned his head to look at another division-level official. It's already full, no problem. Good. Senior Director O'Connor nodded in satisfaction. At this moment, he heard another subordinate laugh and say, "Actually, I think this disinfection process might be unnecessary. Didn't the Biochemical Research Institute say that no harmful substances were found in the air of the Kubanrai world, and the Kubanrai virus isn't transmitted through the air? You are mistaken. The Biochemical Research Institute said they haven't found harmful substances yet. Besides, if we don't disinfect, what if our people carry some kind of virus to the Kubanrai world?" Senior Director O'Connor strongly disagreed with this person's view and said, "As long as the Biochemical Research Institute hasn't sent a report canceling the disinfection process, we must act according to regulations. Don't find it troublesome?" "Yes." More than 10 minutes later, the biochemical safety station within the base became busy, especially with the several electric gates constantly opening and closing. Even so, the line of army soldiers waiting at the entrance stretched out of sight. On the other side, at the Stag Stargate base in the Kubanrai world, managed by Senior Director Addison, the electric gates were also constantly opening and closing, sending out batch after batch of army soldiers. Not far away, Douglas Barrett stood with his arms crossed over his chest, chin raised high, quietly watching his military strength continuously grow, and grow stronger. The fiery clouds in the sky at dusk seemed to hint that this country, and even the entire world, was about to be engulfed in war. They shone bright red, like fire, and also like blood. At this moment, he inexplicably felt fortunate that he had been captured by the Marines before. Otherwise, he might not have had this opportunity to lead tens of thousands of troops to conquer another world. Compared to now and the future, his past experience as a pirate, to be honest, felt a bit petty to him. Compared to a colossus of the world government's size, let alone the Roger pirates, even adding the Whitebeard pirates, Big Mom pirates, and Flying pirates together would only be considered nothing special. Multiverse, tens of thousands of worlds. Looking at the name New World for that sea area now, it truly sounds laughable and nonsensical. What Douglas Barrett didn't know was that on the other side of the world, on the extreme ice continent of Planet C homeland, there was also a man looking up at the sky. Only here, it was already night. The snow-capped snow mountains stood in the starry sky, like silver giants, overlooking the entire world of ice. But magnificent as it was, it still didn't make the man's gaze waver, because the aurora above the iceberg, flickering between light and dark, from shallow to deep, from green to red, drifted lightly between the infinite Milky Way. There is actually such a stunningly beautiful sight in the world. Just this scene makes me feel that this trip was not in vain. The man standing by the window of the ice house sighed sincerely. But Vice Admiral Aokiji, the mission we traveled all this way for hasn't been completed yet. If we go back without getting anything, all the travel time will be wasted. Captain Charles, also wearing a white justice coat behind him, complained helplessly upon hearing this. "La, that is indeed a headache." Cusin rubbed the back of his head in distress, finally moving his gaze away from the aurora. They had been on this continent of white snow and ice for several days. The day before yesterday, they finally managed to find the so-called Jewel Iceberg. At that time, all the Marines and officials gasped when they saw the treasure light like a river of golden water under the transparent ice layer, because there was simply too much treasure. Some people even felt it was more exaggerated than the great treasure One Piece that was live broadcasted in Mary Jo eyes before. However, before these people could cheer for long, they heard Vice Admiral Aokiji say that he seemed unable to open it. After subsequent experiments, it was proven that he indeed could not open it. Although he was a Logia system ice fruit ability user, without awakening, he could only control the ice he created himself, and was completely unable to manipulate the natural ice from the outside world. This greatly disappointed everyone. Some people even lay on the ice surface, looking at the treasure inside and sighing, as if it would be theirs once taken out. But they couldn't possibly return empty-handed after a voyage of nearly a month and only staying for a few days, could they? Therefore, Cusin decided to wait and see. Deep down, he had a feeling that his opportunity for awakening was most likely in this place, but after researching for 2 days, nothing had happened yet. "Vice Admiral, news from headquarters says they want us to return to Maniford within a month if possible. They say the Supreme Political Conference is about to be convened." "What does the political conference have to do with us Marines?" Cusin looked at the colonel with a confused expression. The latter, however, smiled and said, "They say the Marines will also hold an internal high-level meeting that day. Except for those who cannot return due to special circumstances, all vice admirals must attend." La, Then it has nothing to do with us, does it? We are currently in a special circumstance at this moment. Kyuzen, maintaining hot blood, disliked meetings the most. Of course, even if he weren't hot blood, he wouldn't like them. Immediately after, Kyuzen's gaze fell upon the icebergs and snow mountains under the aurora, sighing inwardly. Awakening, awakening, how exactly does one awaken? He didn't understand how Borsalino and Sakazuki could awaken so easily, while he had to put in so much effort and thought. Awakening occurs in a suitable opportunity when the ability user's body and mind catch up to the ability. This was the most striking sentence among the files on Devil Fruit ability awakening that Kyuzen obtained from Marine headquarters. Could it be that my strength hasn't reached the level for awakening? Chapter 234, That is mine. Between the vast expanse of white, amidst the towering glaciers, a golden river, winding like a great river, shone brilliantly under the sunlight. Today seemed to be a rare good day on this extreme ice continent. Kyuzen sat quietly cross-legged before the jewel iceberg, his eyes tightly closed, allowing the warm sunlight to fall upon him and the cold wind mixed with ice and snow to brush against his face. There was something very strange. This place containing treasure was clearly an ice layer, so why did Chinjiao call it an iceberg? No matter how you looked at it, it should be called a treasure jade ice bed. At this moment, Kyuzen had focused his mind within this ice layer. To put it simply, his mental power was radiating outwards, and his observation haki was constantly sensing. Last night, as he lay in bed about to fall asleep, a flash of inspiration struck him. He felt that it wasn't that his body's strength hadn't met the awakening conditions, but perhaps his heart's understanding of ice wasn't deep enough. So, he decided to try this method, similar to meditation. Meanwhile, the Marines and officials who had accompanied the team stood far away, keeping watch for him and helping to disperse the animals living there. Don't underestimate these wild animals. Even a rabbit here was a weapon like those in Drum Kingdom that could tear apart brown bears. Such beings, if placed in some fantasy world, would be enough to be called magic beasts. Ordinary people couldn't deal with them at all. However, facing this group of experts from Marine headquarters, whether they were magic beasts or monster beasts, any that dared to approach would be kicked away, then clutch the spot where they were hit, and quickly flee with a look of grievance. Everyone looked at Kyuzen's back with expectant gazes, because no one wanted to return empty-handed, even if the treasure beneath the ice layer didn't belong to them. But bringing it back would still count as a great merit, wouldn't it? Time passed with the cold wind, causing the golden sun in the blue sky to slowly shift its position, from morning to noon, then to afternoon, evening, night, and then the morning sun of the next day slowly rose again. Kyuzen remained sitting there motionless. No one felt impatient, but everyone still had to live normally. The officials stayed in the ice house, reading books and making calls to their superiors. The Marines, meanwhile, set up a perimeter line. When they encountered passing small animals, they would hunt them casually, then use a transponder snail to notify the people at the camp to come and transport them away, adding a meal for the evening. Wow, this white bear is big enough, it must be 5 meters tall. Yeah, it'll be quite a chore to drag it back. Speaking of which, what does bear meat taste like? Has anyone eaten it? When I was a kid, I ate a 2-meter small black bear my father hunted. It was like pig liver, with a taste of pine oil. The meat was very coarse, not tender. If you didn't sprinkle some salt on it, it was really hard to eat. While 10 or so Marines, including staff sergeants, corporals, and private first classes, were chatting and laughing around a large white bear lying in the snow, they didn't notice a group of individuals approaching from the other end of the polar region. They held various blades and weapons and looked fierce and menacing. Leading them was a bald, muscular man wearing a green coat. His body size was even taller than a white bear, but his head was shaped like a small mountain slope, bulging upwards. At this moment, his gaze towards this group of Marines was filled with rage. His chest heaved up and down from suppressing his anger, and his fists, truly as large as sandbags, were clenched tightly. "You bunch of thieves!" Boom, with a roar, a tangible golden aura, like sea waves, instantly erupted from his body. Within it were streaks of golden lightning that flickered on and off. As they swept over the group of Marines, everyone instantly felt as if they had suffered a severe blow to their spirit. They all rolled their eyes and fainted, silently collapsing onto the cold snow. Enemy attack. But such a violent mental fluctuation was quickly detected by the Marine officers in the distance. The cold atmosphere within several hundred meters suddenly became filled with nervousness. Swish swish swish, streaks of white afterimages swept across the snow-covered land at extremely high speed. At the same time, teams of Marine soldiers, armed with firearms, wearing thick winter clothes, and cloaked in white capes, arrived in groups. Before long, this group of uninvited guests was completely surrounded, with dark muzzles aimed at various vital points on their bodies. However, the leader's expression didn't change. Instead, he took a step forward, puffed out his chest, and shouted loudly. I am Chen Zhao, the 12th generation leader of the Hapo Navy from the Flower Country in the West Blue. Tell your highest officer here to come and see me. He was very angry now, extremely angry. As soon as he received the report from his subordinates stationed nearby that a large number of marine warships and official ships had appeared on the ice continent, he rushed over in a hurry. And indeed, they were here to steal the treasure he had painstakingly accumulated. Flower Country. The marine officers exchanged glances. Their eager bodies also calmed down, because this was a country considered quite famous even among the affiliated countries. Go and call Director Bernal over. A commodore ordered the marine soldiers behind him. The latter quickly took out a transponder snail to notify the camp in the rear. Seeing this, Chen Zhao and the others could only suppress their restlessness and wait silently. A moment later, 3 government officials wearing suits and leather shoes, with furry black trench coats over their suits, walked into the court through the passage made by the Marines on both sides. The one standing in the middle, leading the group, wore a light blue tie, had a receding hairline, and looked at Chen Zhao with a gentle smile on his face. I am Benner, currently the counselor of the World Government's Mineral Resources Department. May I ask Mr. Chen Zhao and everyone from the Hapo Navy what brings you here? Chen Zhao was so angered by these words that he laughed. Looking down at the short man before him, he said angrily. How can you still ask me what I'm doing here? That's what this old man should be asking you. Speak, you Marines, officials, what are you doing looking for my treasure? But in response to such an aggressive questioning, Director Bernal showed a very confused expression and asked. Your treasure? Of course it's mine. Everything behind you is the treasure this old man has accumulated over decades. Director Bernal gave a shake head, looking solemnly at the old leader of the Hapo Navy. The intelligence we received is that somewhere beneath the ice layer on this ice continent, there exists a great treasure suspected to be left over from the ancient era. After several days of exploration, we have also confirmed that it is completely frozen beneath the ice surface, with no entry or exit passages, and no information left behind that suggests a master left it. Therefore, according to world government law, this belongs to natural resources. Chen Zhao's eye twitched upon hearing this, and the veins on his forehead gradually bulged. He roared with a hoarse voice. Nonsense. What natural resources, what ancient era treasure left behind? You're simply treating this old man like a monkey. With your world government's intelligence capability, how could you not find out that what's inside is my treasure? Director Bernal sighed helplessly. Then may I ask, how can you prove that the treasure under the ice layer behind us is yours? This. Chen Zhao was instantly stunned and speechless. He stood there with his mouth wide open, unable to say a word. That's right, how could he prove that the jewel iceberg was his? Then he heard the other party say. How about this, we let you go over and take a look. If you can take out the treasure inside, we can discuss the matter of proof then? Under the gaze of the surrounding Marines and the many members of the Hapo Navy, Chen Zhao speechlessly rubbed his flat bald head. He truly could only look but couldn't take it out right now. Silence, a dead silence. Except for the sound of the cold wind howling, carrying snowflakes, the only sound left on the scene was breathing. Among them, Chen Zhao's increasingly strong heavy breathing was the most obvious. He saw the look of shame and anger on his face growing heavier and heavier. Finally, he roared in frustration. This old man says it's mine, then it is mine. Chapter 235, Come with me to Impel Down. This old man said it's mine, so it's mine. Following Chen Zhao's furious roar once again, his surging emotions unleashed Conqueror's hockey carrying chaotic golden lightning, sweeping across the entire world. Boom, they were like ripple-like air current, causing Director Bernal and the subordinate official behind him to faint the moment they were touched. Immediately after, large swaths of marine soldier holding gun, and even the numerous henchmen of the Hapo Navy behind him, rolled their gaze and fell to the ground layer by layer, like wheat cut down by a gale. Among them, the marine officer-rank combatants, although not completely unconscious, knelt on the ground staggering, their expression pale, and their gaze filled with terror, presenting a pathetic appearance of having lost their combat power. Only the few colonel, commodore, and the newly arrived Rear Admiral Barney who had mastered hockey could stand firm, but their back beneath their coat of justice were covered in cold sweat. Of course. The situation on the Hapo Navy's side was similar. After all, Chen Zhao in his rampage didn't consider his subordinates. Only less than 10 high-ranking executives remained standing. Take them down. Seeing such a scene, the marine officer naturally no longer hesitated. Anger showed on their face as they decisively attacked, their figure flashing at high speed like snow hawk. Instant transmission. Finger gun, Yellow Lotus. Captain Charles was the first to appear in front of Chen Zhao. While letting out a thunderous roar, he hardened his index finger with a layer of pitch-black armament hockey. As his finger pistol force erupted, it transformed into afterimage pointing towards the latter's chest. Get lost. Chen Zhao let out a disdainful snort, not even bothering to use hardening. He merely coated his right arm with a layer of invisible hockey and scattered all the finger pistol afterimage like a siege hammer, then heavily smashed it onto the overconfident colonel. Bang! Colonel Charles spat out a pillar of blood from his mouth, his human body hunched over as he flew backward like a cannonball. After rolling over 10 meters on the ground, he finally stopped. In front of him was a long stretch of snow-stained red. At the same time, the cadre of the Hapo Navy also picked up their weapon and rioted, engaging in fierce combat with the Marine officer, who outnumbered them slightly. Tempest kick. Hashoken, inch. Bang 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 bang, green figure and white figure collided and flew past each other at high speed. Every collision erupted with a gale like a cannonball explosion, and every fly past brought forth rapid whistling sound. On this ice and snow-covered extreme ice continent, filled with glacier mountain range, the Hashoken of Flower Country and the Navy 6 styles, further enhanced by hockey, engaged in the most intense showdown. This old man's treasure. Chen Zhao had no interest in participating in the battle of these henchmen. He now wanted to take a look at his jewel iceberg. Although he didn't believe these Marines had the skill to open the ice layer, what if there was a slim chance? It didn't seem strange for the world government, with its influence, to find a devil fruit user who could retrieve the treasure. With a boom, he stomped on the ice and snow beneath his feet, transforming into a green super missile leaping towards the high altitude. Wrapped in the loud noise of layered air current explosions, he descended in a beautiful arc towards the golden lightning flashing zone. Boom, his massive body size, over 5 meters tall and nearly 2 meters wide, used pure brute force and weight to smash crack into the 10,000-year-old ice layer beneath his feet. At the same time, all the white snow on the surface shot up into the sky like a volcanic eruption. Get away from this old man's treasure. Chen Zhao, radiating a violent aura, breathed a sigh of relief upon seeing the undamaged ice layer. He then roared loudly with malice towards the back of the Marine sitting cross-legged on the ground. But that person gave no response, still silently sitting there facing the countless gold and jewels. Seeking death. Killing intent surged in Chen Zhao's gaze. He was already mentally prepared to completely become a free pirate with the entire Hapo Navy. In an instant, his entire human body swelled up. His tendon, muscle, and membrane bulged, and his bone constantly popped and cracked. The clothing on his upper body burst open, stretched by his human body which was like metal and stone. Only a green coat remained draped over his shoulder, flapping loudly in the gale-like aura. The flying snow vibrating around him was swept away. Boom, the next moment, Chen Zhao was like an ancient giant beast just awakened from being frozen, charging forward with the monstrous rage of 10,000 years. His arm simultaneously took on a pitch-black metal sheen. Bang, suddenly, about 10 meters behind the Marines, a tall ice pillar shot up from the ice surface with a whoosh, but it was smashed by the rampage Chen Zhao's punch. But this was just the beginning. More ice pillar rose up to block his path. At the same time, a large amount of ice spike flashing with sharp, cold light, surrounded by white mist, attacked Chen Zhao from all direction with whistling sound. This ability. Facing such a surging and continuous ice offensive, the hot-headed Chen Zhao calmed down somewhat. While using the strong shockwave generated by Hashoken to crush all the ice pillar, ice wall, and ice spike along the way, he secretly pondered the opponent's identity. It must be him. Controlling ice, it's definitely that Marine's Admiral candidate Aokiji. He gritted his teeth and muttered angrily in a low voice. Sending a Logia system ice fruit ability user to the extreme ice continent to steal this old man's treasure? Damn world government, Marines, damn Garp. As Chen Zhao spoke, he surprisingly directed his greatest rage towards Garp, who wasn't even present. But this also made his sense of urgency grow stronger. No matter how he looked at it, controlling the ice layer with the ice fruit seemed perfectly reasonable. Must completely eliminate this Marine's brat. Having completely made up his mind, Chen Zhao first stopped his forward charge, then hardened his entire human body with armament hockey, letting the dense ice spike, ice sword, and ice spear hit him. At the same time, he made a charging motion. His limb and large spine were pulled taut like a bow. His leg exerted force, the vein on his thick neck bulged, and his muscle twisted wildly as if about to burst. Hashoken's secret technique, drill dragon, drill nail. With a loud bursting boom, large swaths of ice spike were shattered by an invisible energy. Chen Zhao leaped towards the clouds at high speed with the force and weight of his entire human body, instantly escaping all the ice attack. He then aimed his bulging head at Aokiji's sitting position and swooped down like a missile carrying golden lightning. During this process, the pitch-black hockey covering his entire human body flowed like water and concentrated on his head. The wildly flickering lightning also concentrated there. Even more terrifyingly, as his descent speed increased, the air current around him actually formed a visible, translucent membrane. Boom, the human missile landed completely, hitting the target precisely. It kicked up large amount of accumulated snow, and an indescribable massive roar echoed in the sky 400 of meter around. The snow mountain range in the distance began to rumble and tremor as if responding. That was an avalanche, a massive avalanche. But no one cared about the avalanche or not now. Qinzhao swept away all the flying snow around him with a slap, his expression extremely dark as he looked at the crushed ice all over the ground and the ice surface that only had a dent less than a meter deep. It was evident how sturdy, hard, and reliable the jewel iceberg he had specifically chosen to store his treasure was. This was definitely the finest quality ice. Era la la, I just fell asleep and got woken up. How rude. 30 meter away, block of ice emerged from the ice layer surface. Amidst the thick frost, Aokiji's figure slowly appeared before Qinzhao's gaze. He was wearing a refined white suit, black leather boot, and a large coat of justice. He scratched the back of his head, which was full of black curly hair, and complained discontentedly. So fast. Qinzhao narrowed his gaze. His observation hockey had been locked onto the opponent just now, but the opponent still escaped in an instant. Then he saw Aokiji slowly lower his hand and speak faintly, exhaling cold air. I remember you have a bounty too, how much was it? Era, never mind. Come with me to Impel Down. Gradually, thick white frost appeared in the surrounding air, drifting gently in the cold wind. The already low-temperature environment seemed to become even colder. Chapter 236, Aokiji's Mercy and Compassion. Hey! 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 Qinzhao stood atop a massive ice cube, slightly bent over, using his chest like bellows to rapidly breathe in the frigid air. At this moment, he no longer possessed the aura he had 6 days ago, and the rage in his gaze had long since extinguished, turning into fatigue. Qinzhao was very tired now, the fatigue seeping from his feet into his flesh, bone marrow, and spirit. His gaze was somewhat blurry, unable to see clearly, because the rapidly swirling blizzard around him was too dense, reducing visibility to less than 2 meters. But this was nothing. The existence of observation hockey was enough to provide him with clearer perception. Only the white frost clinging to his neck, beard, and chest was the most uncomfortable and troublesome. They were simply too cold, a constant invasion of coldness like fine hairs, continuously eroding the defense of his armament hockey. For such a long time, his fingers, joints, and muscle had begun to feel stiff. This white frost wasn't present initially, it only gradually appeared starting from the 3rd day of the combat. It forced him to constantly maintain armament hockey, hardening, otherwise the continuously emitted ultra-low temperature would completely freeze his body in a short time. Their current position of combat was actually still on the jewel iceberg. However, nothing emitting golden radiance could be seen anymore, as they had long been buried beneath the large and small ice cubes piled up underfoot. As early as the 2nd day of the combat, a majestic, giant iceberg had risen from the ground here, but by the 4th day, it had been completely smashed into ruins during the intense battle. At the same time, a fierce blizzard enveloped the entire battlefield. Today was the 7th day of the Battle of the Two King. Whoosh! 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 Suddenly, a series of 3 sharp whistling sounds tore through the blizzard. Although Qinzhao's observation hockey was not as strong as his armament hockey, he still detected the direction of the incoming attack instantly. His slightly dimmed but still firm gaze glanced to the right, and indeed, he saw 3 long spears made entirely of ice, flying rapidly in a wedge formation with aggressive aura. Hasoken. Qinzhao, who had turned completely black due to maintaining armament hockey, hardening throughout his body, raised his right arm, which was as thick as a cannon barrel, and swung it. Boom, the moment his fist made contact with the first ice spear, an expanding shockwave erupted, crushing all the ice spears into powder with destructive force. At the same time, Aokiji's figure silently appeared behind Qinzhao under the cover of the blizzard, using the irregularly shaped black blade in his hand to cut through the already frozen green coat. Swish! Splurt! Free with a suppressed groan from Qinzhao, his back's armament hockey was breached, and Aokiji's blade cut open a long bloody wound. The hot blood that splashed out was instantly frozen into blood droplets by the low-temperature environment the moment it left his body, falling to the ground and shattering into even finer blood powder. He had actually sensed the latter's appearance, but just as he was about to turn and counterattack, his legs suddenly became unable to move. Looking down, he saw they were bound by layers of ice cubes. Was he careless? It couldn't quite be said that, but rather Qinzhao's attention had become somewhat scattered under the double onslaught of fatigue and cold. After all, after his drill head was flattened by Admiral Garp's punch back then, he not only lost his strongest weapon but also lost a lot of his fighting spirit. Not to mention, He was engaged in a protracted, high-intensity war of attrition in an environment like the extreme ice continent against a Logia ice fruit user who was also an admiral candidate. Ice time. At this moment, Aokiji, also panting heavily from excessive consumption, took advantage of Qinzhao's temporary inability to move or dodge, releasing surging cold air to freeze Qinzhao entirely within a large ice ball. Given the latter's current state, the possibility of him getting out was too low, which finally allowed Aokiji to let out a sigh of relief, watching Qinzhao within the ice and exhaling a white mist of cold air. This combat was truly exhausting. To be fair, compared to the previous generation's top experts like Fleet Admiral Sengoku, Admiral Garp, Admiral Zephyr, Golden Lion Shiki, Whitebeard Edward Newgate, Pirate King Roger, and others whom Qinzhao had directly clashed with and successfully survived to this era, his hockey, martial arts, and combat experience were all significantly stronger than Aokiji's. A direct head-on confrontation was simply impossible. But the final outcome of a combat isn't necessarily determined by who appears stronger, it's closely related to the situation, mindset, age, ability compatibility, and other factors. With his ability awakening and the complete extreme ice environment, it took him a full 7 days to finally wear down this tough opponent. Alalala, sorry, we'll be taking your treasure. I believe they will be used for more important matters. Aokiji knew that Qinzhao inside was actually conscious and could hear what he was saying. However, although he apologized verbally, he didn't truly feel guilty in his heart. After all, Qinzhao's vast amount of treasure was ultimately plundered during his decades as a pirate. It was entirely ill-gotten gains that couldn't be cleaned. As a marine, confiscating them was completely justified. At the same time, the ice fruit ability was activated again. The blizzard covering the entire jewel iceberg quickly dissipated, and the bright, beautiful sunlight once again poured down from the sky, illuminating the dense, broken ice cubes, making them crystal clear and sparkling. Crack. 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 Suddenly, without Aokiji seeming to make any movement, all the surrounding residual ice and broken pieces automatically shifted outwards in all directions, merging and converging in the process. Soon, a ring of ice about 10 meters high, enclosing a large zone, formed. This made the entire environment clean again, and countless dazzling golden radiance shone through the transparent, water-like ice layer. The jewel iceberg was once again presented before the two of them. That's right. Qinzhao, frozen and unable to move within the ice ball, could also see all of this. However, the ice Aokiji created was clearly not as pure as the ice layer in front, causing his view from inside to be somewhat blurry. But when Aokiji walked a few steps forward, then slowly squatted down with his back to him, placing his right palm on the transparent ice layer, Qinzhao's heart trembled. Because the old leader of the Happo Navy felt a strong sense of unease. Could it be that he's going to? The next moment, the entire icy ground began to shake violently, as if a great earthquake had suddenly occurred. Soon, under Qinzhao's similarly trembling gaze, his longed-for treasure jade ice bed began to split apart to both sides at a speed visible to the naked eye. Suddenly, the seemingly endless gold and jewels saw the light of day again. The surging radiance of treasure and precious jade almost formed a tangible radiance that burst forth. My treasure. Qinzhao's emotions soared to their peak. He tried to exert force again to break free from the ice ball's confinement, and indeed, fine cracks gradually began to appear on the ice ball. Unfortunately, Aokiji wouldn't just watch him. He turned around and added another blast of cold air to strengthen the ice ball's intensity. Alalala, can you just stay put? I'll let you see the last moment these treasures disappear. Consider it saying goodbye to them. It's the last mercy I can give you. Q's, with both hands in his white pocket, looked up at the sun in the sky and sincerely mused to himself. Hot blood as he was called, he still couldn't be as ruthless as Sakazuki. He could still hold a certain degree of kindness, even towards pirates and enemies. For this, he had to thank Tsuru. It was Tsuru's earnest teachings that allowed him to retain a sense of compassion. Inside the large ice ball behind him, Qinzhao's frozen face watched Aokiji's back with a blank expression, listening to Aokiji's words. He was so angry he couldn't speak. Chapter 237, Flying Floating Warship. Holy Land Mary Ejos. Step, 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 neat black short hair, sharp yellow ripple eyes like an eagle's, two handsome curved short beards, a black hat adorned with white fluff, a wine red pattern shirt paired with a black trench coat, white pants, and black short boots. Mihawk, with the supreme grade blade, Black Blade, Yarrow on his back, walked along the stone path of Pangaea Castle, slowly heading towards the steel gate leading outside. The golden cross hanging on his chest swayed gently with his steps, but his thoughts drifted back to the room of authority the previous night. You want me to lead troops to suppress Wano country? That's right. But I heard from Shanks that the samurai named Kazuki Oden has already returned. With my current strength, I won't be his opponent. Moreover, I personally prefer to stay by your side and practice swordsmanship. Mihawk still remembered how nervous and anxious he felt facing Lord Imu at that time. Someone will take care of Kazuki Oden for you. Your mission is to represent the world nobles and the world government in guarding the entire Wano country. Specific management affairs will be handled by subordinates. Regarding swordsmanship, a samurai who was closest to me in the swordsmanship realm once appeared in that country. You should go and experience it. That was Lord Imu's reply. In fact, he knew very well that once this decision was made, there was no possibility of changing it. He just wanted to understand more information. A mysterious country of samurai, there should be many swordsmen there, truly fascinating. Jian, who was following behind Mihawk, said softly with a look of longing. In response, the former remained silent, walking out of the castle gate and all the way to the place where the bubble cable car was taken. He found that the edge of the red line here was heavily guarded by large numbers of Holy Land garrison soldiers. But none of this could distract Mihawk and Jian, because their gazes were fixed on the 5 marine warships floating outside the red line. The general shape of these warships hadn't changed much, but many metal jet tubes with red light veins covering their surfaces were installed on the left and right sides of the ship bottom, as well as at the rear and bottom. These jet tubes were currently motionless, but the warships remained steadily suspended there. Oh my god, the warships are flying in the air. Jian covered her mouth in astonishment, her eyes wide as she watched this incredible sight. The wind here seemed very strong, blowing her coat of justice behind her to flutter incessantly. Let's go, get on the ship. Mihawk was also surprised, but his expression remained calm. After a reminder, he stepped forward again, walking against the strong wind blowing towards them. Respected Saint Mihawk, I am Senior Director Bear of the Administrative Department, responsible for the subsequent political affairs of Wano country. Please give me your guidance. A middle-aged man wearing gold-rimmed glasses and a suit and leather shoes came forward proactively, bowing his head respectfully in greeting. Is everything ready? Mihawk nodded, asking as he scanned the entire area. 5,000 headquarters Marines and all administrative staff and technicians from various departments are all present. Those 2 have also boarded the ship. We can depart immediately. Senior Director Bayer replied. Good. Since that was the case, Mihawk stopped talking nonsense and, with Jian behind him, bypassed him and walked towards a floating warship, where temporary stairs connecting to the deck had already been placed. Meanwhile, on another warship, Kaido stood on the deck, looking at the surrounding floating warships, which were clearly creations of the float fruit ability, with a look of deep shock on his face. He truly hadn't expected that even the Golden Lion Shiki had been incorporated by the world government. In the end, he could only give a bitter smile full of helplessness and say, thinking about it, it makes sense. That's the temptation of the war across myriad worlds. Who could refuse it? Looking closely at his neck, the glaring green color was gone, and the shadow at his feet had also fully recovered. It could be said that Kaido was no longer under any restraint. Despite this, he had no intention of escaping or resisting, simply because the men in black had told him that if he chose to flee, the next time he was captured, it would be permanent imprisonment, and he wouldn't even think of stepping into the other world until his death. Was there anything more terrifying than this consequence? And the aura on that warship is also somewhat familiar. Who could it be? Kaido's gaze, full of sense of oppression, looked towards the interior of another warship. This aura, to be honest, wasn't very strong, only slightly stronger than the marine vice admirals around him. However, the beast instinct unique to his own user instinctively felt an inexplicable sense of crisis from it. It seems that besides me, the world government has another trick up their sleeve. Boom. 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 Suddenly, as the temporary stairs below were moved away by the Holy Land garrison warriors, white mist spewed out from the various metal tubes beneath the 5 floating warships. Propelled by them, the warships quickly turned and flew at high speed towards the new world. The entire process was very smooth. Mihawk and Jian, filled with curiosity, came to the bottom level inside the cabin. Here, they saw many thick long iron canisters stored in metal cabinets. Respected Saint Mihawk, this is the power energy room, and that is the plug-in McClatchy mechanism compressed steam engine after being renovated by the Academy of Science. Senior Director Bayer stood aside and introduced it to the 2. Compared to the prototype steam boiler which requires continuous boiling of water to produce steam, it can push in canisters that have stored compressed steam beforehand, providing compressed steam to all jet pipes whose angles and jet power can be adjusted, thus controlling the movement of the entire floating warship. When the steam in the canister is used up, it can be taken out and replaced at any time. Jian then asked with confusion. What happens if all the steam canisters are used up? The Academy of Science also considered this issue, so they installed a small seawater desalination steam boiler in another location. However, this boiler produces a large amount of waste impurities and consumes a lot of electric power, so it will only be activated when there is an urgent need to replenish compressed steam. I see. Giant suddenly understood. How much longer until we reach Wano country? Mihawk, on the other hand, was more concerned about the main business. Senior Director Bayer respectfully said. If we don't encounter extreme weather, then based on the warship's flight speed and distance, it will take no more than 2 days to arrive. Good. Tell Kaido and the others to come to see me in 2 hours. Mihawk felt that he should meet the 2 major combat powers he would rely on to suppress Wano country this time. Would you like to see them together, or separately? Mihawk pondered for a moment, then ordered. See them separately. See Kaido first. Yes. Senior Director Bayer quickly agreed. Giant quietly watched the conversation between the two. Her current identity was accompanying Rear Admiral, responsible for Mihawk's guard duty. Although she knew very well that Mihawk didn't need her protection, Mihawk's identity was a world noble, so a basic display was still necessary. Meanwhile, an ordinary warship sailing on the seas was docked at an island dock on an island of ice and snow. A strange trio was seen walking down the warship deck accompanied by a group of Marines. Among them, a beautiful young woman wearing a white coat, a red cheongsam, and with a graceful figure, pushed up the glasses on the bridge of her nose and looked at the Drum Mountain peak soaring into the clouds deep inland on the island, sighing with emotion. Phew. It's so cold. So this is the Drum Kingdom, known as a great medical nation. I wonder what the medical academy is like. There should be many amazing doctors there. Humphrey, I just hope they can really cure my eyes and the vice captain's body. The person speaking was a fishman nearly 6 meters tall, with bluish skin and black sunglasses on his face. However, his body size was far greater than that of ordinary fishman tribe members. Hee, if you're cured, then you'll be a Marine from now on. Marine it is. Anyway, the captain has agreed. I, Sebastian, will only follow the captain my whole life. Hearing the words of his mixed-blood companion, who was a mix of fishman and giant, the thin person sitting on his shoulder, only about 1 meter tall, sighed. Joining the world government is also a good thing. It's better than continuing to be a pirate. Chapter 238, Whole Army Martial Arts Package. Wano Country. Inside Pangaea Castle, by the window 1 floor below the Room of Authority, Im gazed at the 5 black dots rapidly disappearing into the distance, murmuring softly to himself with a thoughtful expression. Sending Mihawk there to take charge was an idea he came up with on the spur of the moment, but it was also something he had given considerable thought to. Firstly, his celestial dragon identity was high enough. Secondly, his personality was stable and obedient enough. Thirdly, sending a sword fanatic to a country of samurai couldn't be more fitting. Lastly, he was a bit tired of training the other party every night. Wouldn't it be better to spend that time on his own matters? He might as well directly teach him the training methods and steps for the Conqueror's Hockey coding technique and the Armament Hockey internal destruction technique and let Mihawk practice them in Wano country. Pu-upper-upperu, Lord. Just then, a charming maid walked over, holding a silver-white platinum lead tray. On it, a specially made gold and red transponder snail was ringing loudly. This was the 5 Elders' dedicated transponder snail. Im casually picked up the handset and heard the respectful report from the other side. Lord Imu, we just received news from the South Blue Extreme Ice Continent. Aokiji has opened the Jewel Iceberg, and our fleet is currently transporting the treasure. At the same time, they also encountered the Happo Navy led by Qin Zhao. A 7-day battle ensued between the two sides. Aokiji defeated Qin Zhao with the awakening of his ice fruit ability and the favorable environment, and he is now imprisoned. Hearing this news, Im felt a bit surprised that they had encountered Qin Zhao and his group, but the result sounded perfect. From this point on, Aokiji's overall strength finally caught up with Akainu and Kizaru, possessing reliable combat power matching an admiral candidate, although Akainu was now an army admiral. Lord, Qin Zhao and the Happo Navy are the official pirate force of Flower Country in the West Blue, and Flower Country is an important affiliated country with a reverie seat. Now their king wants to ransom Qin Zhao and the others. What is your opinion? Im pondered for a moment, first setting the tone with a cold voice, saying, publicly attacking Marines and government officials is a grave crime. He then stated his decision on how to handle it. Of Flower Country's 8 pirate navies, only the Ippo Navy is allowed to remain as the Royal Guard. All other navies are to be incorporated into Marine headquarters, and the Hashokan secret method must be surrendered to the world government. Qin Zhao is to be imprisoned in Impel Down for 6 months. If he is willing to surrender after 6 months, he shall be appointed as an army lieutenant general, and his drill head will be restored. He did not specify the consequences if Flower Country refused or Qin Zhao did not comply. The 5 elders would naturally handle these matters according to custom. As you command, Divine Oracle. Im placed the handset back on the transponder snail's shell. The maid kept her head bowed throughout, retreating a few steps before slowly turning and leaving. The former, however, glanced at the already empty blue sky outside the window and chuckled softly. The Army's Hashokan, the Marines' Fishman Karate, this configuration is quite good. Back then, when he saw the Revolutionary Army having their lower-level warriors train in Fishman Karate, he thought that since this martial arts wasn't exclusive to the Fishman tribe, it would be excellent for widespread adoption by the Marines. Speaking of which, Redleg Zeph's kicking technique taught to Sanji is also good. Let me think. Im used his extraordinary mental power to search his past life memory deep within his mind. Before long, he found the information he wanted. In the canon, he saw the newspaper about Golden Lion Shiki's escape from Impel Down 22 years ago, then sailed the Grand Line for a year before returning to the East Blue, and met young Sanji 9 years later. So now it was 24 years ago, and his cook pirates were likely still in the East Blue, so they shouldn't be hard to find. However, Im was very clear that red leg kick technique could not be equated with Diable Jam. The latter's flame came from Sanji's genetically modified physique. But just the fact that the former could produce leg wind capable of intercepting bullets made it a martial arts very suitable for popularization throughout the whole army. It could be called a perfect prerequisite skill for 6 powers, instant transmission, 6 powers, tempest kick, and 6 powers, moonwalk. Hashokan, red leg kick technique, fishman karate, samurai swordsmanship, and later archery from Amazon Lily. With so many options, the soldiers of the 3 forces could be taught according to their aptitude in the future. As for archery, although this world also had modern firearms, for people with extraordinary physiques, the range and power produced by bows and arrows could sometimes be greater. Speaking of which, Wano country seems to have ninjutsu too. Rizo's performance didn't seem fake. Did he figure out chakra? At this moment, Im had returned to the treehouse within the room of authority and sat down on the soft sofa. His mind was drawn to the words ninjutsu. Most of the ninjutsu in Wano country were fake. Fukurikadu's Zerlobe firecracker technique was clearly an initial manifestation of life return. Shinobu's ninjutsu came entirely from the Parimsha system ripe fruit. Only their shuriken jutsu and ninja movement technique were real. He had been quite disappointed when he realized this, until Rizo appeared. If Rizo's smoke release technique could still be explained by the Parimsha system scroll fruit ability, such as hiding himself inside a scroll when a smoke bomb exploded, then his clone technique, substitution technique, body binding technique, flying squirrel technique, and lightning shuriken technique truly couldn't be explained. Especially the latter two, one could instantly create an escape hole in a wall, and the other could generate lightning on a shuriken from a distance. No matter how you looked at it, these had nothing to do with the scroll fruit ability. They were completely earth style and lightning style. So the question was, how were these ninjutsu activated? The strangest thing was that it seemed only Rizo among all the ninja knew these ninjutsu. The combat methods of other non-ability user ninja were very ordinary, just agile and high-speed body technique combined with shuriken and swordsmanship. Looks like I need to call Mihawk and tell him to pay attention to this Rizo. He can't just kill him casually. Im mused, stroking his chin. If this Rizo truly possessed genuine ninjutsu, then his value was immense. It was entirely possible for Planet C to see the emergence of another supernatural ability system, following swordsmanship, martial arts, hockey, devil fruit ability, and black technology. The more he thought about it, the more he emphasized this matter. He immediately took out a transponder snail and called Mihawk, who was still flying in the sky. 5 minutes later, he hung up the call again. Next, I'll plan my future travel itinerary. I can finally go out and explore. I haven't appreciated those fantastical scenery since transmigrating to this world. This was the thing Im wanted to complain about the most. Other transmigrators could go wherever they wanted after coming here, but him? He stayed cooped up in Mary Joai's all day. Only really coming up to seek death before brought him some joy. As for play tennis or listening to Tesoro and the others sing, those were just ways to pass the time. Let me think, I definitely need to go to Little Garden. Not only did I promise Oimo and the others, but Dory and Broji themselves are also quite valuable. Then, should I go to Alabasta? I kind of want to see the Sandora River, which is 50 kilometers wide in diameter. This is truly outrageous. According to this data, the entire island area is about 2.2 million square kilometers, which is even larger than a Xinjiang province and a Japan combined. Thinking of this data, Im felt a bit speechless towards the true creator. This was truly a continental island. But compared to Alabasta, the focus is indeed Sky Island. Unfortunately, the Noah's Ark prepared for him still needed some renovation and decoration. To officially set sail, He would have to wait at least until after the Supreme Political Conference, right? What's on Sky Island right now? Chapter 239, Kaido of the Beasts returns to Onigashima. 2 days later. It was deep into the night, the sky above like a thick black cloth, with only the bright moonlight able to easily pierce through. What terrible winds and waves. If the sea conditions here are always like this, then this country's isolationist policy isn't just a political issue. Mihawk, wearing a high-quality trench coat that was black on the outside and red on the inside, stood before a railing on the warship deck, his sharp, rippling golden pupils like a falcon's, looking down at the churning waves below. The 5 flying warships he led had arrived in the sky surrounding Wano country, and naturally, he had witnessed the chaotic sea area known for having the second highest risk of landing after Ragin Island. The height of those large waves was basically over 10 meters each, and the wind speed had reached the level of a storm. Facing such an environment, even a warship would find it difficult to escape unscathed. It was no wonder why Kazuki Oden couldn't manage to leave the sea back then, as even the Whitebeard pirates nearly suffered the fate of having their ship destroyed and crew killed. What was interesting, however, was that no matter how the strong wind outside blew, these 5 floating warships were not affected in the slightest. Looking closely, each warship seemed to be wrapped in a flowing transparent air wall. All the strong wind would merge into this chi wall upon contact, having no effect on the ship's body itself. Interestingly, if the wind force didn't reach a certain level, this flowing transparent air wall wouldn't become visible. It certainly looks terrifying. Jian, standing behind Mihawk, also watched all of this with a serious expression. She was already starting to feel the difficulty of this trip to Wano country. About 30 minutes later, all the winds and waves suddenly stopped. Immediately after, a brightly lit skeleton-shaped island appeared on the dark sea surface in the distance. Looks like we've arrived. At this moment, a figure with a massive body size behind Giant said in a deep, magnetic voice. Then please proceed according to the plan, Kaido. Mihawk ordered without turning his head, his expression and tone as calm as ever, possessing some of Lord Amu's aloof demeanor. TCH. Seeing the celestial dragon brat's arrogant attitude, Kaido snorted in displeasure and leaped off the warship deck. He then transformed into a divine dragon covered in blue dragon scales in the air, enjoying the gentle bathing of the moonlight as he headed towards his lair, Onigashima. Will he really obey? Jian asked, looking worriedly at Kaido's dragon body. He will, because Kaido has no other choice. Mihawk understood very well how great the temptation of the Stargate and the multiverse was for someone like Kaido. As long as the Stargate remained under Lord Damu's control, he could only obediently follow orders. However, he didn't want to tell Jian these things. After all, when it was time for her to know, she would naturally know. There was no need for him to say anything extra here. On the other side, when the majestic Azure Divine Dragon approached Onigashima within a certain distance, a black lightning bolt carrying gunfire flash shot out from the skeleton island shrouded in lanterns. You really came back, Boss Kaido. The person who arrived was over 6 meters tall, their entire body, including their face, covered in black clothing. A mask, gloves, goggles, helmet, and a double-breasted coat adorned with skeleton decorations were all present, leaving not an inch of skin exposed to the air. But the most striking feature was the black feathered wings supporting his high-speed flight from behind, and the flame burning at the back of his head, truly like a race from myth. Of course I'd come back, what's so surprising about that? Kaido heard the concern and relief in King's words, which made him feel a long-lost sense of emotion. Within the entire Beast Pirates, he considered only King and Yamato as family, while Queen and others were merely subordinates. How has the situation on the island been recently? Not very good, people's hearts are unsettled. But because we took immediate secrecy measures, Wano country doesn't know about your matter, so the situation is still stable. Kaido, in his divine dragon manifestation, was very satisfied upon hearing this and laughed. Let's go, head back first. I have something to discuss with you and Queen. Okay. King naturally had no opinion. In his eyes, Kaido's return was all that mattered. Meanwhile, below on Onigashima, Queen, who had also sensed it with observation haki, was leading nearly 1,000 beast pirates crewmates surging out of the skeleton's wide-open mouth, gathering at the main entrance and exit under the rows of terrifyingly large teeth. This place truly gathered all the characteristics of Wano style. Elaborately carved bridges intersected over water pools, Oni statues on both sides spouted fresh water, 2 fox statues stood facing each other like greeters, large parasols hung with lanterns, and on the right stood a giant katana that seemed to pierce the heavens and 3 Maya-O banners. Basically, every place one saw was a beautiful scenery, except for the large skeleton, said to be the head of a demon race, which looked a bit scary. Coupled with the fact that it was surrounded by mountains on all sides with only one entrance and exit at the front, it gave off a strong sense of oppression. Captain is back. Ha 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 ha, I knew boss would be fine. Exactly. How could a mere impel down possibly trap boss Kaido? All the beast pirates' crewmates looked up worshipfully at the massive dragon body in the night sky. In their hearts, Kaido was the freest existence on the seas. No matter how arbitrary he was, no one or any influence could control him. The key was that these guys, who were usually lawless and liked to cause chaos, had been incredibly stifled these past few days. Under King's strict orders, everyone had to stay on Onigashima and were not allowed to go to Wano country for activities. This was equivalent to being forcibly sealed in a residential area. Furthermore, the internal facilities now were far less rich and complete than they would be 24 years later. For example, there was no yukaku established by Black Maria, which is a place like a brothel. So, to find women, they could only go to the flower capital. No wonder they were so stifled. Disperse, Queen, King, come with me. However, Kaido didn't pay much attention to these subordinates, ordering them down with a cold attitude. Honestly, he now looked down on these 1,000 or so people. After being trapped in Impel Down and hearing the grand vision painted by that man in black, he finally understood the vastness of the universe and the infinity of space-time. What was the Beast Pirates? What was Wano Country, the Grand Line, the Pirate King? They were nothing but ants, mere dust. Kaido had seen the light, awakened, realizing how ridiculous his previous goals were. Now, his heart held the infinite tour of the myriad worlds. Soon, the three arrived at the 5th floor of Onigashima, which was considered Kaido's room. Basically, no one entered casually, except for this white-haired little lalai with bare little feet, wearing a Maiko outfit. "Father. You're finally back, Father." The 4-year-old girl cried out, pulling open the wooden door, and leaped with all her might towards Kaido, who had just returned to his human body size. Seeing this, the latter revealed a kind smile like a loving father, no longer caring about discussing serious matters. He held his daughter in his arms with his strong, thick arms. "Ha ha ha ha, silly daughter, old man just went out to play for a few days and enjoyed the scenery of that so-called world's greatest prison." It must be said that the father-daughter relationship between the two was indeed very harmonious and close at the moment. King and Queen on the side were not surprised by this, as Kaido only showed this expression when facing Yamato. Alright, I'll eat with you later. Now old man has something to talk about with them. You go out and wait first. Okay, be quick." Yamato puffed out her little cheeks and jumped down sensibly on her own. Her little feet quickly stepped on the tatami mats and left, closing the door behind her. Seeing this, the kind expression on Kaido's face changed as quickly as the climate on the Grand Line. He changed from an ordinary father back to the captain of the Beast Pirates. "King, Queen, what I'm about to say contains no element of joking. Listen carefully. Let's start with how I was captured and taken to Impel Down." Chapter 240, The Great Play of Wano Country begins. Stargate? Otherworld? Kaido has agreed to recruitment. King and Queen were stunned speechless. Due to the sheer information volume, complexity, and unbelievable nature of the information, the two stood rooted to the spot for a long time, unable to speak. Mainly, they didn't know where to start. Cough, 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 so you don't want to be the Pirate King anymore? King looked hesitantly at Kaido, who was sitting on the stage, only to hear the latter grin and sneer. "Pirate King is nothing. Can I ask, how are you sure what the world government said is true, or have you personally been to another world?" Queen, as a dark scientist, also calmed down and found points worth noting in Kaido's narrative content. "That hasn't happened, but from the footage they provided, it doesn't seem fake." Immediately, Kaido spoke about the great war against those other-world living dead named Kobanari World, led by Douglas Barrett and Sir Crocodile wearing black justice coats. They also said that the Great Sea in another world will turn ability users into non-swimmers. "Oh, and Queen, when you get to that Biochemical Research Institute, you should be able to learn more about the situation in advance." "Ah, this." Queen thought to himself that he hadn't agreed yet, but he didn't dare say it to Kaido's face. Besides, after hearing Kaido's words, he was indeed interested. Putting aside those living dead, a great sea that doesn't restrict ability users means there's no pea substance in the seawater, right? At this moment, Kaido picked up his wine gourd, took a large gulp, wiped the drink that spilled from the corner of his mouth, and said in a deep voice, "Queen, your matter is finished. Go out first. I have something to talk about with King alone." Okay. Queen spread his hands, turned and left nonchalantly, even bouncing and shaking his whole body of fat while humming lyrics full of pace. "Oh, right, if I join the world government, will I have a chance to meet that Stella?" Many people in the Beast Pirates knew that Queen had recently become obsessed with Tesoro, whose performance style was extremely flamboyant. From time to time, he would gather a group of subordinates and run to the banquet hall to sing those songs. But he was also infatuated with the excessively beautiful Stella. When Queen learned that Stella was Tesoro's lover, his feelings towards the latter turned into disgust and jealousy. When the time comes, I must sing the rap I composed for him, so he'll be so ashamed that he'll personally give Stella to me. The two people in the room didn't pay attention to the guy's mumbling. Albert, look at this. Kaido waited until Queen had completely left, then stand up and walked down from the stage. He took out a file bag from inside his clothes and handed it to the stunned king. The latter didn't expect the former to suddenly call out his real name. What is this? Seeing that Kaido just stared at him without saying a word, King had no choice but to take off his black mask. It wasn't that it obstructed his vision, but that he felt a bit stifled. When he opened the file bag, he found a document inside. The next second, King's pupil suddenly contracted and began to tremble violently. Lunarian Tribe Amnesty Decision. The Supreme Executive Committee, on Marine Calendar August 1, 1498, decided to lift the order for the comprehensive capture of the Lunarian tribe by the world government, which had been in effect since Marine Calendar March 1, 698. The Lunarian tribe is allowed to obtain equal authority and obligations as all races. There were hundreds of words written on it, the main meaning being that the Lunarian tribe could live freely and procreate freely from now on. However, they must also abide by the world government's orders and laws. If needed, they could also apply for an island they favored as their racial territory. At the bottom were the autographs of the 5 Supreme Executive Committee members and the red seal of the Supreme Executive Committee, meaning it possessed the highest level of legal effect from the world government. However, the content was as strong and haughty as ever, showing no intention of expressing apology for the Lunarian tribe's plight. After all, in the eyes of the 5 elders, the world government captured them because they were indeed guilty of crime, and there was no need for apology. Now, they generously forgave the Lunarian tribe's crime, which was the greatest forgiveness and mercy. How? How is this possible? Albert could hardly believe a single word he saw before his eyes. He slowly raised his head in utter astonishment to look at Kaido in front of him. Is this real? It should be real. The world government values your Lunarian tribe's aerial combat capability. This holds almost irreplaceable important value in the future conquest of other worlds. Kaido, carrying his huge wine gourd, laughed loudly with a face full of excitement. Surrounded by the aroma of alcohol, scenes of future war once again filled his mind. Just thinking about it made his blood boiling. So that's how it is. Albert suddenly understood, but his mood also became very complex. Should he be happy for his race, or angry at the world government's hockey? Isn't this just making the Lunarian tribe serve as a military source? I know what you're thinking, but I think having value is the luckiest thing. I heard those people say that the Marines' giant unit has been transferred to the army, and then the Fishman tribe and Merfolk tribe are entering the Marines. This is clearly preparation for future other world wars. Your race is naturally Air Force? Kaido thought for a long time before a word popped out of his mouth. Then, the more he thought about it, the more sense it made. The world government would likely also establish an Air Force. Otherwise, they couldn't possibly classify the Lunarian tribe under the Army or Marines, right? But thinking about it carefully, I wouldn't be. Kaido temporarily stopped paying attention to Albert's constantly changing expression and began to ponder this matter. He had originally thought he would join the army later. But thinking about it now, there's also a high possibility of joining the Air Force, which doesn't even have a shadow yet. Ho! After a long time, Albert let out a long breath, and the gaze in his eyes also returned to calm. He finally understood, and he also had a decision in his heart. Genocide and procreation don't seem like a multiple-choice question. He was just curious about one thing. Currently, he was the only one from the Lunarian tribe. How long would it take to procreate enough to form an army? Even if he desperately found women to have children with, it would still be 20 years or more until they grew up. Brother Kaido, what should we do now, and how should we make arrangements for the crewmates below? Hearing Albert's question, Kaido woke up from his thoughts, revealing a cruel sneer and emitting a terrifying killing intent. First, come with me to meet someone and tell them the situation in Wano country. Next, we'll clear out all the daimyo families on the island and turn this country upside down. Consider it an appetizer before the conquest of the multiverse. After hearing this, Albert touched the long saber at his waist with his right hand and asked, "Did the world government people come back with you? Where are they?" Kaido pointed upwards. "They're up there, but they'll appear later. We need to put on a very interesting great play." Chapter 241, Orochi Castle and Odin Castle. Flower Capital. Ancient charm is the greatest characteristic here. Bathed in 1,000 years of history, everything within sight is radiant and beautiful. White walls and black tiles, flying eaves and layered pavilions, temples and courtyards, stone bridges and flowing water, Exquisite buildings full of Wano-style charm are half hidden among cherry blossoms and green trees. This place is located in the center of the entire Wano country, and it truly enjoys eternal spring, always maintaining the most comfortable warm climate. Naturally, the cherry blossoms bloom continuously. They dance with the wind, fall with the wind, and the pink and white petals constantly flutter in the air, accompanied by every passerby, elegantly known as Hanafubuki, blizzard of falling cherry blossoms. And the center of all this scenery is Orochi Castle. This is a castle pavilion standing on a giant tree trunk that resembles a beautifully shaped posture, with several waterfalls gushing down. Earlier, it was called Kazuki Castle, Shogun Castle. But since the last descendant of the Kurizumi clan, Kurizumi Orochi, became the new general 4 years ago, it was renamed Orochi Castle. This night, it was exactly 2 hours after the 5 floating warships led by Mihawk arrived above Onigashima. Inside the city. At this time, the lights here still shone with their usual glory. Waves of exquisite Wano-style music played by traditional musical instruments such as the shamisen, taiko drum, guzan, and pipa, were like a swarm of dancing butterflies accompanied by the light, fluttering around the entire castle. Ha 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 ha, pour me some drink, Aoi-chan. In the hall on the highest floor, a man wearing luxurious yellow daimyo robes, a black cloak draped over his shoulders, a golden crown on the left side of his head, a purple top knot on the right, a square face, upturned whiskers, and a body size that appeared extremely burly even when seated in the upper seat, was laughing wildly with a debauched expression. His extremely arrogant laughter brutally resulted in the destruction of the beauty of the music. He had 2 beautiful kimono-clad girls in his arms, sitting at a table filled with various drinks and delicious food. While enjoying the close service of the beauties in his embrace, he used his hands to grope their graceful bodies back and forth, looking completely like a winner in life. Orochi, there's news from Kaido's side. A figure with long, pale, shoulder-length hair and a face painted ghastly white, resembling a witch and indistinguishable as male or female, walked over to remind him. He was Kurizumi Higurashi, the mastermind and instigator behind the turbulent situation in Wano country. Kurizumi Orochi heard the heaviness in the other party's tone and immediately had the geisha next to him stop playing. Then he pushed the kimono-clad beauties out of his arms. Only after the hall was finally left with just the 2 of them did he speak. Tell me, what is the matter? He had great understand that his current status and power were maintained by the beast pirates, so he paid great attention to their every move. Kaido wants the elimination of Kazuki Oden and the daimyo families of each region. He wants us to help spread this news to attract all the rebels to Kuri, and as for us. After listening to Kurizumi Higurashi's long speech, Kurizumi Orochi felt unable to understand. Why suddenly cause such a big commotion? Didn't we agree to wait until Oden had danced the naked dance for 5 years and lost the trust of all the daimyo, samurai, and citizens before making a move? Although he wasn't very smart, he had to understand that it had been less than a year, and there were still many people willing to believe in Oden. It was clearly not the best time. Kurizumi Higurashi performed a shake head, pondering the strangeness of the matter. I don't understand either, but Kaido said he has already made the decision. He has already headed to Oden Castle in Kuri. It seems the beast pirates are impatient and want to deal with all the troublesome elements in Wano country in one go. Alright. Kurizumi Orochi performed a stand-up, fully displaying his body size of 3.5 meters. However, his body proportions were strange, always giving people a feeling of being particularly short and stout. If the elimination of those daimyo can really happen, it will be a great thing for us too. I've long been tired of the opposition from those guys outside. I just hope they don't mess things up. After speaking, he suddenly shouted towards the empty area below the platform. Fukurikaju. Whistling sound, accompanied by a rapid whistling sound, a figure over 2 meters tall, with a very long skull and earlobes, wearing black sunglasses and a purple kimono, instantly knelt down there. Please give your order, General Sama. He is the leader of the Momoerigmi, the ninja troops directly under the general of Wano country. He is the type who only obeys the general's orders, regardless of who the general is. Gather all the ninja, be ready to depart at any time. Yes. The next second, Fukurikaju disappeared from the spot again. Kurizumi Orochi then turned his gaze back to Kurizumi Higurashi and asked. How many samurai are willing to listen to my orders now? Just over 2,000. Kurizumi Higurashi showed a worried expression and said in a deep voice. Under the influence of the Kazuki clan and those daimyo, the samurai have a low recognition of your identity as general. In 4 years, we've only managed to win over this many people. It wasn't 24 years later yet, but even in the canon timeline 24 years later, there were only 5,000 samurai willing to serve Orochi. Then I only have 7,000 samurai in my hands. In Wano country, ninja are also considered samurai, Kurizumi Urachi walked back and forth on the platform with his hands behind his back, his face full of worry. How can we complete the mission requested by Kaido with just this many people? Which of those few daimyo doesn't have 3,000 samurai under them? Plus, there are definitely people in Flower Capital who are willing to follow Oden. Just a rough calculation gives the other side nearly 15,000 samurai. He felt increasingly that Kaido's side was too hasty. Such a scale of samurai army, even the beast pirates might not be able to stop them, right? After all, they only had a mere 1,000 people. Regardless, Kaido's orders must still be followed. At most, we'll prepare to withdraw from Wano country first. Once they are defeated over there. Kurizumi Higurashi also lacked some confidence. Although he had lived overseas for a long time, he had never truly witnessed the real terror of high-level combat power. He just felt that even someone as strong as Kaido couldn't withstand 15,000 samurai, could he? That's the only way. First, let the ninja spread the news, and then leave it to the beasts. Kurizumi Urachi gritted his teeth and made the decision. At the same time, 1,000 miles away, above Hakamei town, the capital of Kuri region, the wind and clouds suddenly changed. The night sky, which was originally bright with the moon and stars, was now covered by thick dark clouds. This attracted the attention and unease of the citizens below. Even a child walked out of their house due to the commotion outside and looked up at the scene in the sky with the adults on the street. What's happening? Is it going to rain? Look. That is. Suddenly, a little girl abruptly raised her hand and pointed towards the dark clouds on the right. A blue dragon tail was actually extending from there. Immediately after, more and more people saw a faintly visible divine dragon in the clouds circling above Oden Castle on the mountain, causing gasps of surprise one after another. Suddenly, an atmosphere of panic spread throughout Hakamei town. It's Kaido. What is he doing here? Inside the city, Raizo, also a ninja, stood on the balcony of the pavilion, his expression solemn as he looked at the giant azure dragon in the dark clouds. Behind him stood the 16-year-old Neko Meimoshi and Inu Arashi. He comes with ill intent. Immediately use the smart snail to notify Lord Oden. Raizo immediately made his judgment and said firmly. Before that, our mission is the protection of Lady Toki and the two highnesses, and hold on until Lord Oden arrives. Chapter 242, The Beast Pirate's Final Madness. Mother, what's happening outside? 4-year-old Momonosuke and 2-year-old Tori clung to Kazuki Toki's calves, their small faces filled with nervousness. It's alright, everything will be alright. Kazuki Toki knelt down and held the two children in her arms, comforting them softly. But her heart was heavier than ever, because she knew she needed to make a decision quickly. Although everything had happened too suddenly, giving no time for preparation. Mr. Raizo, Neko Meimoshi, Inu Arashi. Madam. Raizo and the two others quickly returned inside. Kazuki Toki bit her lip and said in a deep voice. Even if we notify Oden now, he won't make it back in time. Kaido's target must be these two children, so they must be taken away from here immediately. Only then can the Kazuki family's bloodline be preserved. Mother. Young Momonosuke and Tori panicked upon hearing this. But just as they were about to pull away from Kazuki Toki's embrace to ask questions, they found that her grip was very strong, giving them no room to struggle free. Momonosuke, you must remember, you are the man who will bear the future of Wano country, a descendant of the Kazuki family's bloodline. You must live on resolutely. Mother. Momonosuke was terrified, tears instinctively welling up in his eyes. He didn't know what was happening, why a normal night had turned out like this. Madam, we can absolutely take you with us to escape from here. We would not hesitate to pay with our lives. Raizo, dressed in a blue ninja outfit, shouted loudly. That's right. As Lord Oden's vassals, we will naturally do our best to protect your safety. Neko Meimoshi and Inu Arashi echoed in unison. There's no time. Kaido's people must have surrounded this place, even with the help of the samurai below. But what if Momonosuke gets into trouble in the chaos? He's too young. Kazuki Toki's face gradually showed a look of anxiety. She then sincerely looked at the three vassals and said. I will use my ability to send you to Wano country 20 years in the future. After that, I'll leave it to you. This. Raizo and the others were stunned. Just then, Momonosuke suddenly turned his head and cried out to his mother who was holding him. Then you can come with us. I'm sorry, I still have to accompany your father. I can't just leave him here alone. Kazuki Toki kissed Momonosuke's forehead, then kissed the bewildered Hori. Bang, just then, on the balcony of the pavilion where Raizo and the three had looked towards the sky earlier, a huge black shadow descended from the air with a strong aura, instantly cracking the surrounding ground and walls. Oden's wife and children, huh? Don't worry, I won't kill you for now. Hurry and go. Kazuki Toki panicked, and she immediately activated her Parimsha system time fruit ability. Mother. The next moment, Momonosuke and Hori in her arms, as well as Raizo, Nekomamushi, and Inu Arashi opposite her, were enveloped by a mass of colorful flash. In the blink of an eye, they turned into streaks of white beam and shot out from above Odin Castle, disappearing without a trace. Damn it! Kaido, who had just walked in, was stunned by this scene, but immediately his face showed an angry expression. He instantly flash-stepped in front of Kazuki Toki and grabbed the small woman with his massive palm. Tell me, where did you send that ninja, cat, and dog? Ugh! Kazuki Toki was squeezed painfully by Kaido's palm force, but her face showed a look of relief, and she smiled. The Kazuki family's bloodline, you cannot sever it. I'm asking about the ninja, cat, and dog. Did you understand, you stupid woman? Not those two useless little things. Kaido became even more angry at her irrelevant answer. However, his words also caused Kazuki Toki, who was enduring the pain, to widen her eyes. She asked in disbelief. Why do you care more about them? She felt a strange sense of being insulted. Wasn't the bloodline of her own children the most important thing? Less nonsense, answer my question. To Kaido, Raizo, Nekomamushi, and Inu Arashi were important targets that the celestial dragon brat had specifically requested to be captured alive. Although he didn't understand why, having already decided to join the world government, he didn't want to fail even at such a small task. Of course, it seemed impossible to complete now, but at least he had to find out how many years into the future they had gone. Hey. Although Kazuki Toki found Kaido's disregard for her children somewhat difficult to understand, she would never tell him any information regardless. Kaido wanted to crush this woman to death right now, but then he thought, killing her like this would be too boring. It would be better to wait for Odin to arrive and kill her personally in front of him. Ah, it's the beast pirates. Kill. Suddenly, outside the pavilion balcony behind them, large areas of gunfire flash began to rise. The noisy battle cry was incessant. The sound of weapons hitting the human body was so pleasant to Kaido, more beautiful than any exquisite music. Hundreds of beast pirates crewmates, dressed in black jackets, black leather pants, and black cloaks draped over their shoulders, looking very much like gladiators, were fighting fiercely with the defending samurai, their faces twisted in a grin. Ha 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 ha. I've been wanting to kill people for a long time. I was so stifled. Boss Kaido is brilliant. We should have dealt with these samurai long ago. Behind them, a group of people were pulling bows and shooting flaming arrows into the samurai crowd. The rising flames devoured the fighting samurai and the affected buildings one by one. The entire Odin Castle, inside the city and out, was completely enveloped in slaughter and war. What should we do? What should we do? Let's run. What if those pirates attack us later? That shouldn't happen, right? Although they've caused trouble frequently in recent years, they haven't massacred ordinary people like us on a large scale. The citizens of Hakamei town at the foot of the mountain watched this scene in horror, some discussing it amongst themselves in a flurry of voices. Others chose to run home, close their doors, and hide. Some even packed their belongings and decided to flee with their entire families. It could be said that the originally prosperous town had now fallen into chaos. About 2 hours later, the citizens who had held on to a glimmer of hope watched in despair. Black shadows with glowing red eyes, carrying a strong, pungent smell of blood, slowly approached the town from the direction of Odin Castle. The nearly 3,000 samurai who had remained to defend Odin Castle were thus completely massacred by the beast pirates. No. When the first middle-aged man died under the cleaver of a beast pirate's crewmate, the entire Hakamei town exploded. Countless men, women, old and young screamed, fleeing madly towards the outskirts of the town. Bang! 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 With each gunshot, a citizen fell into a pool of blood, only to be completely cut down by an approaching beast pirate's crewmate with a blade. They had actually begun a massacre. More people frantically set fire to the surrounding buildings. Soon, raging flames spread throughout the entire town, echoing the Odin Castle on the mountain, which was also engulfed in gunfire flash. The beast pirates seemed truly mad. Alright, stop chasing. Let them spread our terror to every corner of this country. See who still dares to resist us. Suddenly, King's figure descended from the night sky illuminated by the gunfire flash, stopping the crewmates who wanted to continue chasing the citizens. This made some of the bloodthirsty individuals quite dissatisfied. But upon meeting the gaze he swept over them, their anger was instantly extinguished by the chill in their hearts. Go back and eat something. There are too many people left to kill. As soon as he finished speaking, King withdrew his gaze, flapped the black feather wings behind him, and soared into the sky. He allowed the beast pirates thugs in the town to bully the women who had been deliberately left behind. If you want to destroy someone, you must first make them mad. Let them go mad before their destruction. That is their only remaining value. It can also be considered a memorial to the soon-to-appear beast pirates. Chapter 243, Ninja vs. Ninja. A clear blue sky with scattered white clouds, a scorching sun illuminating everything. Suddenly, several white pillars of light mixed with colorful floating light descended from the sky. The entire process could only be described as fleeting. It might have been more noticeable at night, but in broad daylight, it was truly silent. What's going on? Where is this? Raizo, Nekomemoshi, Inuyarashi, and the others had just opened their eyes. First, they saw an endless expanse of deep blue enter their vision, realizing they seemed to be lying on the ground. Had Lady Toki really sent them 20 years into the future? But why was there such a huge rainbow in the sky? Just as they were full of doubts and about to get up, they suddenly felt a heavy pressure. What was going on? Then they heard Momonosuke and Hori crying out. Raizo immediately increased his physical strength, staggering slightly as he ran over to help the two children up. Highness, are you alright? The slightly older Momonosuke held his younger sister in fear, saying, "It's so uncomfortable, I can't breathe." Raizo quickly released more haki to cover the two of them. Indeed, the gravity here is so strange, just walking is difficult. Nekomemoshi walked over with heavy steps, his expression solemn as he spoke. They could feel that although the sunlight above was particularly scorching, both the fresh air around them and the soil beneath their feet had obvious moisture. It was likely that it had just rained last night. Inuyarashi's attention, however, was on the old ruins in front of them. This seems to be Oden Castle, but at the same time, Raizo slowly walked to the edge of the cliff, pulling one child with each hand, but instantly froze when he looked at the scene of Akamai town below. What's wrong? Nekomemoshi and Inuyarashi, who were also not very old, walked over curiously. The next moment, they also instantly turned to stone like the previous three, staring dumbfounded at the massive Akamai town below the mountain. Because the five of them often lived inside the city of Oden Castle on the mountain, they were extremely familiarized with the scenery overlooking Akamai town. In their impression, the scope of Akamai town was clear at a glance. Outside the torii that served as a boundary was an endless wasteland. But now, the bright red torii wooden gate was still there. But outside the gate stood rows of black-tiled attics on a scale no less than Oden Castle. And street after street filled with people coming and going filled their entire vision. From their perspective, they couldn't see any wilderness at all. It was as if the entire Kuri region had transformed into a large, antique, cherry blossom-filled Japanese-style city. Is this really Akamai? Kuri? Nekomemoshi muttered to himself in disbelief, his mouth agape. If it weren't for the mountain peaks outside the torii proving it, he would really have thought Lady Toki had sent them somewhere else. What's that? They're flying. At this moment, little Momonosuke noticed the anomaly in the sky above them. They saw flying objects bursting out from the white clouds, diving towards the distance at high speed. Immediately after, they saw many strange-shaped objects flying up from that direction in the distance, disappearing into the horizon in the blink of an eye. How could Kuri become like this? Raizo withdrew his gaze. He was more concerned about the pavilion castle in the center of the urban area that looked several times taller than Oden Castle. Because what was hanging on it was no longer the Kazuki clan or other daimyo family's family crest, but a flag consisting of a cross connected to 5 balls. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Suddenly, streaks of lightning like afterimages swept over at high speed. This naturally put Raizo on high alert, but he was filled with regret, realizing he had been mesmerized by these huge changes. Nekomemoshi, Inuyarashi, each of you grab a highness and run quickly, find a way to escape Wano country. Raizo immediately shouted. With a flip of his palms, 8 cold, shimmering black shuriken appeared between his fingers. The cat and dog also knew it wasn't time for nonsense, and quickly picked up Momonosuke and Hori, ready to leave. But the speed of the newcomers far exceeded their imagination, surrounding them in an instant. But they didn't attack immediately, which made the few of them feel surprised and uncertain. These people are also ninjas. Mimiwarigmi? Raizo noticed these guys wearing white masks, white vests, and carrying long sabers on their backs. Whether it was their way of moving or the aura about them, they had a strong ninja style. Go quickly. Suddenly, Raizo threw the 8 shuriken in his hands towards his surroundings. Immediately after, he took out 6 blue balls and smashed them onto the ground. Ninja art, smoke release technique. With several popping sounds, a large amount of thick blue smoke enveloped the entire area. Go. Nekomemoshi and Inuyarashi saw this opportunity. Each holding a child, they were about to turn into afterimages and dart into the nearby forest. Just as they moved, a black shadow flashed before their eyes, followed by a sharp pain in their abdomen. The next moment, The entire person was sent flying back at an even faster speed, groaning in pain. Damn it, my body is too heavy. Nekomamushi, who rolled several times on the ground, complained angrily. As for Raizo, after throwing the shuriken, with the intention of covering their retreat, without a word, he formed hand seals again and continuously unleashed various ninjutsu. Ninja art, clone technique. The next moment, over a dozen manifestations identical to him appeared in the thick smoke. As soon as they appeared, they scattered, and at the same time, they took out shuriken and threw them. Ninja art, flower shuriken. The shuriken, scattered like falling flowers, combined with the smoke that obscured people's vision, indeed slowed down the approach speed of the masked ninjas, forcing them to use the katana or kunai in their hands to block back and forth. However, Raizo's actions were not over yet. Besides his self-created ninjutsu, he himself was a Parimshia system scroll fruit user. Scroll technique. Suddenly, 2 scrolls were thrown out by him with both hands. These scrolls automatically extended and opened in midair, wrapping around 2 masked ninjas like pythons. Bang bang, Raizo thought he had dealt with the 2 but was shocked to see that the people he had wrapped up suddenly exploded into a ball of white smoke. Immediately after, a log appeared there. Is this substitution technique? How is that possible? This ninjutsu is something I just developed, I haven't taught it to anyone at all. Battles between ninjas often happen in the blink of an eye. Within these short few seconds, Raizo's manifestations were successively blown up into white smoke. Damn it! What exactly is going on with the gravity here? Seeing this situation, Raizo, gritting his teeth, he directly took out his ultimate move. With a flip of his right hand, a yellow scroll instantly appeared, and he shouted, Scroll technique, earth concealment. Boom, as the scroll was thrown by him into the high altitude. When the scroll completely burst open, a large amount of soil and stones surged out from the thick smoke, as if a mountain had collapsed, falling down overwhelmingly. Honestly, the momentum was quite intimidating. Raizo was also confident that he could block these ninjas for a while. He was about to turn around to support Nekomamushi and Inu Arashi. But the next second, his eyes suddenly widened to their limit, looking in disbelief at the actions of a masked ninja in front of him. He saw that person quickly form hand seals in front of him, then take a deep breath. Whoosh, when he opened his mouth again, he blew out a visible tornado whirlwind. This whirlwind rapidly expanded and in the blink of an eye blew the soil and rocks that hadn't landed yet back into the sky. The surging gale swept up everything, blowing it all into the forest behind. Its power was so strong that even the overflowing wind force was enough to easily blow away all the thick blue smoke. Boom 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 boom, Raizo was completely stunned listening to the continuous roar of the soil and stones hitting the ground. On the other side, Nekomamushi and Inu Arashi had just stood up, clutching their stomachs, and were horrified to find that the 2 highnesses in their arms were gone. Looking again, they saw that they had been tied up with ropes by the opponents and were crying loudly there. Momono Suksama. Princess Hori. At this, the 2 mink tribe members completely bristled. Streaks of constantly flashing electro appeared on their bodies. Before, they were worried about hurting the 2 children, but now they had no scruples. Although they would rather not have this kind of freedom, Raizo of the Mist, Nekomamushi, Inu Arashi, and Momonosuke and Hori of the Kazuki family, we have been waiting for you for a long time. Welcome to Wano country 20 years later. Just as both sides were at loggerheads, a hoarse voice sounded in the court. Raizo and the other 2 followed the voice but had their gaze drawn by those crimson eyes. It was actually the masked ninja who had just used ninjutsu to blow away all the sand and stones. Chapter 244, Take Down Kirizumi. Annihilate the Beasts. Wano country in marine calendar year 1498. Flower capital. A bustling street, brightly lit and filled with people coming and going. Phew. Today's over too. There are still 4 years left until the 5-year promise. I must keep going and rescue all the hostages. Kazuki Oden, wearing only a white fundoshi, completely ignored the disappointed or disgusted gazes of the people around him. He put his clothes back on with a smile on his face. It seemed he had just finished a naked dance. Judging by the sweat on his forehead, he had performed it quite seriously. Lord Oden. Just as he was gazing into the distance towards Sorachi Castle, Kinnaman's shout suddenly rang out from behind him, filled with anxiety and panic. Oden turned around and was surprised to see that Kinnaman wasn't the only one who had come. Denjiro, Kikunojo, Ashuranoji, and others had also rushed over, their expressions ranging from anger to nervousness. Their arrival seemed to have a strange effect. Instantly the atmosphere of the entire street became serious and drew the curiosity of many citizens nearby. What's wrong? As soon as Oden asked, Kinnaman, as the chief vassal, urgently shouted. We just received news from Oden Castle. Kaido and the beast pirates attacked there. The Dendenmushi there is unreachable now. What? Kazuki Oden was shocked and paled, instinctively stepping back a few steps, but immediately stopped and began running frantically towards the outside of the flower capital. At this moment, his mind was filled with the images of Kazuki Toki, Momonosuke, and Tori. Don't let anything happen, please don't let anything happen. At the same time, Kinemon and the others desperately followed behind, shouting loudly. Lord Oden, Kuri region is too far from here. You can't just run back on foot. Kawanetsu has gone to prepare horses. But Oden couldn't hear these words at all. After all, he could run much faster than a horse. At this moment, the faster, the better. As for the issue of stamina consumption along the way, he didn't even think about it. What should we do? We can't catch up to Lord Oden. Just after running out of the flower capital, Denjiro, wearing glasses, stopped and looked exasperatedly at Oden's figure, who had already left them far behind in the distance. Kawanetsu is here. Quick, get on the horses. At this moment, Kinemon was pleasantly surprised to see Kawanetsu leading 6 horses. Judging by their large and sturdy body size, they were likely borrowed from a wealthy household stable. But who could care about such things at a time like this? Where's Lord Oden? No time for explanation. Get on the horses and chase after him. Kinemon and the others quickly mounted the horses, frantically whipping their flanks and rushing towards the direction of the Kuri region. Completely ignoring the starlight still filling the sky above, the group desperately galloped towards Oden Castle in Kuri region under the stars and moon, each person praying in their heart that Madam and the Highnesses were safe and sound. Meanwhile, in Ringo, where heavy snow fell and it was always winter, Shimatsuki Ashimaru, who was personally holding a broom and clearing the snow from Toko's cemetery with his vassals, had just received urgent intelligence brought by a samurai. The beast pirates launched a night raid on Oden Castle. Massacre of the citizens of Hakamei town. Kaido declared he would sweep away all daimyo family and rebellious elements in Wano country. These shocking pieces of news stunned everyone present. They let a goose feather snow fly around them in the cold wind, unable to understand why Kaido had suddenly gone mad. Shimatsuki Ashimaru, who looked almost identical to the future Roronoa's or Oba had no bloodline relation, frowned and directly took out a small dendenmushi from his pocket to contact Shimatsuki Yasui and Hakamei. They belonged to 2 branches of the Shimatsuki family, usually living their own lives and not interfering with each other, but they would contact each other when something happened. It must be said that their 2 families occupied half the country of Wano country and were the only samurai family that could rival the Kazuki family. I was just about to call you. You received the news too, right? Shimatsuki Yasui, who was thousands of nautical miles away, said with a solemn expression. Although I don't know the situation with Kaido, since he has already made a move, let's take this opportunity to resolve the beasts and Orochi in one fell swoop. Shimatsuki Ashimaru's sharp gaze was fixed on the dark clouds in the direction of Kuri region. The twin swords at his waist seemed to respond to the hot blood in his heart, trembling slightly as if eager for combat. Of course. Although Oden's recent actions have been disappointing, the Kazuki clan is in trouble, and we daimyo cannot stand by and do nothing. The sturdy Shimatsuki Yasui spoke into the dendenmushi while allowing his attendants to help him put on his armor. Then, he gripped the katana handed to him with his right hand. Daimyo Fuzuki Oden of Kibi and Daimyo Ugetsu Tengayama of Udon just told me they have already gathered most of their samurai and are heading towards Kuri region. News also came from the flower capital that Oden and his group of vassals have also departed. Shimatsuki Ashimaru listened, pondered for a moment, and said. Too hasty, they are too hasty. They should have waited for everyone to gather before going. However, with Kazuki Oden there shouldn't be a big problem. Although he strongly disliked Oden's naked dance behavior over the past year, he still highly acknowledged his strength. I think we cannot ignore Kurizumi Orochi. He has the Mimowarigmi under his command. While those ninja are not good at frontal combat, they are skilled at assassination and guerrilla tactics. Shimatsuki Yasui walked with a grim expression to the balcony of his attic, looking down at the nearly 4,000 armed samurai who had already formed ranks below. He asked. Then what is your meaning? Shimatsuki Ashimaru, leading the vassals behind him towards Ringo Castle in the east, said heavily. First, take down the Kurizumi clan in the flower capital, and then go support Oden and the others. This way, we won't have to worry about problems from the rear. Originally, if Kazuki Oden and the daimyo of Udon and Kibi had been willing to wait for them to arrive before setting off, they could have ignored Kurizumi Orochi altogether. The best option would have been to concentrate their forces and first deal with the beast pirates in Kuri region. But since they had already split into 2 groups, it was better to take down the flower capital first. Alright. Shimatsuki Yasui of Hakamei did not hesitate further and decisively agreed to Ashimaru's operation plan. After ending their call, He forcefully drew his long saber, its sharp blade pointing directly at the bright full moon in the sky. Under the gaze of thousands of samurai, he tilted his head back and shouted loudly. Take down Kirizumi. Annihilate the beasts. This shout seemed to stir up the wind and rain of Wano country, not only echoing throughout the night sky of Hakamei but also erupting in Ringo, Kibi, Udon, and other regions. Even many samurai in the flower capital who were still willing to follow the Kazuki family rushed towards the Kuri region on fast horses after hearing the news. For a time, the atmosphere throughout Wano country became extremely tense. Many citizens quickly hid in their homes, sensing that wind and rain were coming. But they could only tremble and pray that misfortune would not befall them. Above Onigashima, 5 marine warships floated quietly above the dark clouds. From their height, the moon in the night sky was unusually large and bright. Beautiful. This was Mihawk's thought as he gazed at the moon from the deck. His sharp, wavy golden hawk eyes seemed completely unconcerned with the chaos and situation on the large black island in a distance. Neither the blood nor the fire, nor even the rolling thick smoke of stampeding horses, were as worthy of attention as the Milky Way at this moment. He actually wanted to go down and spar with those samurai who inherited ancient swordsmanship, but Lord Imu's mission was the most important. What a pity, the bloodline of Shimatsuki Ruma is about to end here. Mihawk sighed, gazing at the moon with his back to Giant. Chapter 245, The Unstoppable Beast Pirates Slaughter. The next morning, just as a sliver of white appeared on the horizon, the crisp chill of the night still lingered in the air. Near Hakamei town in the Kuri region, the area was already a mess. Even Odin Castle, built against the mountain, had long since burned down and collapsed in a sea of fire. However, a difference from the canon was that this time, the various records, mto, and treasure recorded in scrolls inside had been taken out beforehand. This was troublesome, but it was Mihawk's request, and the beast pirates could only comply. King, clad in black armor and black feathers, descended from the sky with the flames on the back of his head. Completely ignoring the greetings of the beast pirates' crewmates resting after having their fill along the way, he quickly walked up to Kaido, who was sitting at the foot of Odin Castle's mountain. Brother Kaido, the troops from Kibi and Udon are crossing the bridge. Judging by their direction, they seem to be planning to gather at Rakugo town. It must be said that the Lunarian tribe, capable of high-speed flight at high altitude, was indeed the best Air Force unit. Kaido asked in a deep voice. Only them? Yes. King nodded. That's good. Since they couldn't wait and set off first, let's satisfy them. Prepare to depart. Kaido sneered as he stood up, leaning on his cane abo. All right. King immediately turned around to gather the beast pirates' crewmates, while Queen silently put away the photo of Stella in his hand. He actually didn't need to participate in this combat, he could have gone ahead to the floating warship as a scientist. However, Queen felt that this was likely his last large-scale war where he would personally fight, so he wanted to kill to his heart's content. Meanwhile, the Udon daimyo, leading 3,000 samurai, arrived first outside Rakugo town, not far from Hakamei town. The thick smoke raised by their horses had already been noticed by the citizens inside the village. It's Lord Yuzuki Tempura. Great. The samurai lords have finally arrived. Outside the village, many men, women, old and young wearing kimono had gathered. Sorrow and anger filled everyone's face, but their gaze towards the samurai was full of hope and joy. These people were not just villagers from Rakugo town, most of them were refugees from Hakamei town. Tell me the specific situation. Why did Kaido suddenly attack Odin Castle? Yuzuki Tempura, whose face, features, and eyebrows were all long and narrow, dismounted his horse and asked a man who appeared older in a deep voice. The string of prayer beads hanging around his neck gently swayed on his strong chest as he walked. However, the Udon daimyo's question was destined to receive no answer, because these citizens from Hakamei town also didn't understand why the beast pirates had suddenly launched an attack. Yuzuki Tempura watched the samurai under his command spread out on their own to be vigilant, thinking to himself. Could it really just be to eliminate us daimyo? Just then, the ground began to tremble, drawing the attention and vigilance of many people. But when they saw another large battalion of mounted samurai rushing over, everyone's mood became even more filled with excitement. The Kibi daimyo is here too. That's Lord Fuzuki Amushibai. That's right, the arrivals were none other than the somewhat stout-looking Fuzuki Amushibai and the over 3,000 daimyo family samurai under his command. With this, nearly 7,000 capable samurai gathered in this small Rakugo town. The entire atmosphere instantly became extremely lively, bringing the citizens a greater sense of security. Some even thought hopefully, with so many samurai lords, they surely have the ability to retake Hakamei town and avenge their family. But little did they know, Fuzuki Amushibai and Yuzuki Tempura were not feeling so relaxed at this moment. The beast pirates are not that easy to fight. Don't look at them having only about 1,000 people. If no one can tie down Kaido, then the military advantage won't mean much. Yuzuki Tempura said to Fuzuki Amushibai in a heavy tone, looking towards Sakamei town. We can only wait for Oden to arrive. No matter what, his surname is Kazuki, and at a time like this, he should still be the leader. Fuzuki Amushibai nodded and sighed with emotion. Although they still didn't understand why Oden was doing a naked dance, at a time when such a major war was approaching, they had no time to dwell on it. They could just ask him later. He should be here soon. It's only a bit further from the flower capital to here than it was for us. Family head. Just as the two daimyo were talking, a vassal belonging to the Yuzuki family ran over in a hurry, shouting. A large number of beast pirates have appeared from the direction of Sakamei town. That fast? Yuzuki Tempura and Fuzuki Amushibai were startled. The next second after exchanging glances, they instantly disappeared from their spots, rapidly flashing towards the village entrance on the other side. Soon, they swept past the assembled thousands of samurai and appeared at the very front of the formation. Indeed. Looking out, they saw many strangely dressed individuals. Each of them carried a strong blood aura. The killing intent in their eyes, like red light, and their terrifying sneers made them look like a group of bloodthirsty humanoid demon beasts. Just watching them approach filled one's heart with fear. It seems these guys are planning to devour us first. Fuzuki Amushibai watched the beast pirates with a solemn gaze. His right hand was already gripping the sword hilt at his waist, and the aura around him was also steadily rising. Humphrey, if it were just our Yuzuki family, we'd really have to consider retreating. But now that the two families are united, nearly 7,000 samurai are enough to fight them. Yuzuki Tempura looked resolutely at the blue divine dragon circling in the air, fearlessly drew his katana, and shouted towards the charging pirates. Kill. Annihilate the beasts. This order instantly ignited the hot blood within the samurai. They roared wildly at the top of their lungs, while simultaneously charging out, transforming into dense afterimages, meeting the beast pirates head-on, the pirate crew that had brought them fear for 4 years. To be honest, these samurai had long been waiting for this day to arrive, waiting for the daimyo to gather all the strength of the samurai and drive these pirates from overseas out of Wano country. And now, besides Yuzuki and Fuzuki, the samurai of the Kazuki clan and Shimatsuki clan were also rushing over from behind. What was there to fear then? Even if they died in combat today, what of it? Dying without regret, dying without hesitation, dying without fear, that was the Bushido spirit. Dying for their country and family was precisely what they pursued. Boom, the beast pirates and the Wano country samurai violently collided. Blood splattered, and blades broke. Piercing screams echoed through the sky above Rakugo town. The morning sun was slowly rising, witnessing this scene of brutal slaughter. However, a situation that was somewhat unexpected but also reasonable occurred. The samurai army of nearly 7,000 people was actually being beaten by the 1,000-plus pirates with no ability to fight back. It looked like it wouldn't be long before the former's front line was broken through. Upon closer observation. First, in terms of body size, apart from the two daimyo and about 10 vassals, the samurai side generally had a height of around 1.8 meters, while everyone on the beast pirates side was nearly 2 meters tall, with many even reaching 2.3 or 2.5 meters. Without considering hockey and life return, whether one's body size was large or not indeed determined the strength of their power. Then there was hockey. This point was strange, very strange. Logically, the daimyo families of Wano country all possessed the secret method for cultivating armament hockey. However, judging from their performance in combat, apart from those vassals with elaborate attire, most of the samurai had not mastered the power of hockey at all and were simply relying on exquisite swordsmanship to face the enemy. On the beast pirates' side, not only was armament hockey standard, but many also possessed observation hockey. Coupled with the presence of some mixed zone users, they could easily knock down swathes of samurai. No matter how the samurai, with bloodshot eyes, hacked with all their might, they were either easily dodged and had their heads blown off by an axe, or their blades were caught and crushed by the pirates' hockey-hardened black bombs, all while the pirates swore cold sneers. Under such circumstances, even though each beast pirate had to face the encirclement of at least 7 samurai, they still carved out waves of blood amidst their wild laughter. Wherever they went, blood rain flew, and dismembered limbs and broken blades splattered everywhere. Unstoppable. Completely unstoppable. Chapter 246, Enraged Kazuki Oden. Die. The lean daimyo Ugetsu Tengayama of Yoda approached King with lightning speed. As he let out a long cry, the sharp sword in his hand suddenly erupted with astonishing strength and speed. That was hockey. He coated the blade with armament hockey, further enhancing the strength of the already Ndo. Instantly, the blade glowed with a deep black light. The air current cutting through the air whistled urgently. Swish, in an instant, the incomparably sharp air blade clashed with a giant katana whose blade was over 3 meters long, producing a clanging sound like striking jade and tapping metal. At the same time, with a loud noise, a visible air current exploded from the point of collision between the blades. The ground cracked, sand and stones flew, and even the pirates and samurai fighting nearby were violently pushed away by the gale. Crack, what's wrong with this sword? The next second, Daimyo Ugetsu Tengayama's expression changed. He stared in astonishment at the giant katana, whose original copy smooth blade had suddenly turned serrated. The crucial point was that his own blade was stuck inside. Flame Emperor. King held the red sword hilt in his left hand. A fiercely burning fireball rose from his right palm and, in Daimyo Ugetsu Tengayama's constricted pupils, he pressed it towards the nearly bare chest. The latter didn't want to abandon his blade and could only watch helplessly as the flame exploded in front of him. With a pained grunt, he was sent flying. The string of prayer beads hanging around his neck broke in the scattered flames, turning into objects like oversized bullets that shot out. Fortunately, the area had been cleared beforehand, so no unlucky individuals were hit. Swish, King didn't give the opponent any time to regain his footing. The flame at the back of his neck burned even more fiercely. He looked like a black shadow enveloped in gunfire flash, charging forward with the giant katana in his hand. Damn it! Seeing him press so relentlessly, Yuzuki Tempuri gritted his teeth, enduring the pain in his chest. Using observation haki, he dodged King's first blade attack. Soon, the two sides, who had forcibly cleared an open space in the chaos battlefield, became entangled, displaying astonishing movement speed and attack speed. It was like two top sword masters fighting at high speed, condensing countless blade lights filled with killing intent, constantly crisscrossing and shattering upon collision. In addition, balls of scorching high-temperature flames raised the temperature in the court, as if transitioning from early morning to noon ahead of time. The nearby pirates and samurai were drenched in sweat and forced to retreat repeatedly by the incoming heat wave. In the current Wano country, the Akazeya 9 of the future had not yet grown up. The strongest individuals under Kazuki Oden were the 4 daimyo and Hyagro from Flower Country. It could be said that Yuzuki Tempura was at his peak, while King was only 23 years old. But even so, the latter could still fight on equal footing with the former, going head-to-head without showing any weakness, thanks to his Lunarian tribe talent. On the other side of the battlefield, which was full of corpses and blood. Compared to King, Queen's combat situation was somewhat disadvantageous. Although he was 32 years old this year, a full 9 years older than King. His main profession was actually a scientist. How could he compare to King in terms of combat? Crucially, Queen had not yet begun the renovation of his body. He couldn't fire laser beams, nor could he unleash burning fist, lightning, invisibility, and other flashy techniques. So at this time, he could only rely on the powerful defense and recovery strength brought by his animal system, dragon fruit, ancient zone, brachiosaurus form, and the great cleaver in his hand to contend with Daimyo Fuzuki Oden of Kibi. Interestingly, although there was a significant difference in their height, both of them were of the plump type, which made the scene look somewhat comical. And looking at Queen, he was clearly enjoying himself, even humming a yo-yo-yo melody to the pace. In the high altitude, Kaido, in his divine dragon manifestation, scanned the bloody slaughter below with piercing gaze. However, his thoughts were not focused on the victory or defeat here. Instead, he was thinking, if a war scale of nearly 10,000 people reached this level, how spectacular would a war scene of hundreds of thousands, or even millions, tens of millions be? However, I still have to see the so-called Gabinarai world with my own eyes. Whether it was truly another world, he would know by flying around there a few times. He could also experience the great sea that wouldn't turn ability users into non-swimmers. At this moment, Kaido noticed Queen being cut down by the plump daimyo of Kibi. Enemy General, I have defeated you. Daimyo Fuzuki Oden stood before the fallen queen with killing intent, the katana in his hand, which had long turned into a black blade, fiercely hacking towards the latter's neck. Wait. How about I sing you some rap, okay? No. But how could this daimyo of Kibi care about Queen's screams? He had already made the decision to use the opponent's decapitation to mourn the citizens and samurai who had tragically died under the beast pirate's cleaver. How dare a mere weakling act so fiercely? Just as the blade was about to fall on Queen's neck, a fierce purple lightning flashed before Fuzuki Yushibi's eyes. Bang! Its speed was so fast that although his observation haki perceived it, his body couldn't make any reaction at all. He was directly smashed away by a massive cane abo. Thunder Bagua. Kaido, who had reverted to human form at some point, held the swung cane abo, his gaze grim as he looked at the daimyo of Kibi, who was spitting blood and flying backward in the air. Dangerous purple lightning flashed on the large club covered in spikes. Lord Fuzuki Amushibai, Yuzuki Tempura, who was engaged in fierce combat with King, also saw this scene. His eyes immediately split with rage, and he cried out in alarm subconsciously. However, the former wouldn't wait for him to compose himself. Taking advantage of his distracted attention, he immediately unleashed his strongest techniques at this stage. Fire Dragon Emperor. A fierce flame suddenly burned on the giant katana in King's hand. As he quickly pointed towards Daimyo Ugetsu Tengayama, a fire dragon, whose color resembled magma due to the extreme condensation of the flame, coiled out along the long blade. This dragon had astonishing flight speed. Just as Yuzuki Tempura's cry fell, he was pounced upon by the scorching eastern fire dragon. Like a pearl in the fire dragon's mouth, he rose into the high altitude with a scream. And that wasn't all. At some point, King had transformed into a giant pterodactyl. Like a fleeting spark, he chased after the daimyo of Udon and heavily struck the fireman before him with his burning black wings. Danbo Emperor. Without any surprise, Daimyo Ugetsu Tengayama only had time for a single scream. Under the terrified gaze of the thousands of samurai around him, he drew a beautiful arc of gunfire flash before crashing heavily to the ground. Whether by coincidence or because King and Kaido had a telepathic understanding, he happened to land next to Daimyo Fuzuki Odin, and both were already unconscious. One was completely burned, emitting black smoke and residual heat, while the other was covered in electricity coating, with all his bones shattered. Lord Yuzuki Tempura. Lord Fuzuki Amushibai. Suddenly, a tall figure like the wind appeared on the scene in the blink of an eye. As his figure abruptly stopped, a fierce gale swept in all directions. Fortunately, the two daimyo, who were rolling their eyes, were held in his arms and were not blown away again by the strong wind and air current. So you've finally arrived, Kazuki Odin. Kaido's expression was filled with excitement. A strong killing intent flowed in his smiling eyes. He was looking forward to the upcoming combat, confident that it would be a satisfying fight. Kaido Kazuki Odin pulled his gaze back from the two daimyo. When he slowly raised his head to look at Kaido, his gaze was filled with grimness. He was truly enraged. You did not keep your promise to us. Since that is the case, please die here. Kazuki Odin slowly stood up, drawing Hidden Rain Village Nohaba Hidden Mist Village and Inma, both belonging to the 21 great grade swords, from his waist. A violent scarlet aura emanated from his body. Come on. Kaido raised his black kanabo, which was covered in purple lightning, and grinned sinisterly. Chapter 247, This battle, we will surely win. Flower Capital. The atmosphere here was extremely tense at this moment. There were hardly any pedestrians visible on the brightly lit streets. Instead, the rooftops were bustling. Ninjas, their faces half hidden by masks, were flashing across them at high speed, each carrying a katana on their back. Leaving aside the strength of these ninjas, just looking at their attire, the Memowarigmi were not professional enough. They didn't even have basic unified uniform. Was it appropriate for them to be so colorful? Inside Orochi Castle, a ninja wearing a yellow ninja uniform was kneeling below the stage, while Kurizumi Orochi, who had just finished listening to a report on the stage, had a drastic change in expression. The samurai from the two Shimatsuki families are coming towards us? Yes. The yellow-clad ninja nodded, confirming the point again. Although these ninjas were not as good as samurai in direct combat, they were excellent at gathering intelligence and monitoring targets. What should we do? What should we do? That's the Shimatsuki clan. Kurizumi Orochi completely panicked. He habitually looked at Kurizumi Higurashi, who stood beside him looking like an old witch, but her face was also filled with panic. Right, is it possible to rely on the surrounding mountains to stop them outside the flower capital? His suggestion referred to the fact that the flower capital itself had no city wall but was surrounded by mountains, requiring only the defense of the two entrance and exit. Samimaru, you should be able to block one side. Kurizumi Higurashi looked towards the screen behind Kurizumi Orochi and said loudly. Immediately after, a slightly hoarse voice came from behind it. I can, but what about the other side? Those ninjas can't possibly stop the samurai troops. Don't forget, they have Shimatsuki Ashimaru. Can Shimatsuki Ashimaru be left to Fukurekaju? Kurizumi Orochi quickly asked, his tone carrying obvious hope. This. Kurizumi Higurashi opened her mouth but couldn't speak. She herself didn't believe Fukurekaju could defeat Shimatsuki Ashimaru. At this moment, Kurizumi Semimaru from behind the screen spoke again. This old man has an idea. Quick, tell me. Kurizumi Orochi turned around in surprise and delight. Kurizumi Higurashi also looked at the decrepit old man who walked out from behind the screen. The latter met their gazes and said. Directly abandon the flower capital, take all the affiliated samurai and ninja troops to Kuri. Go to Kuri? Kurizumi Orochi didn't quite like this suggestion in his heart. He had finally become the general and gained this prosperous flower capital. How could he abandon it just like that? But Kurizumi Higurashi pondered for a few seconds before realizing, and she laughed excitedly. Good idea. Huh? Kurizumi Urachi looked at her in surprise, only to hear Kurizumi Higurashi explain. Semimaru means that since we can't stop the two Shimatsuki families, we'll just lure them directly to Kuri, and then let Kaido and the beast pirates deal with them. We can just come back afterward. That's right. Kurizumi Urachi's rather ugly large head suddenly understood, and he slapped his own brain. His gaze towards Kurizumi Semimaru was also filled with praise. Exactly, that really is a good idea. What are we waiting for? Let's leave quickly. With that, he shouted at the yellow-clad ninja who was still half kneeling below, waiting for order. Quickly go notify Fukurikaju, tell them to protect me on the way to Kuri. Yes, General. Upon receiving the order, the yellow-clad ninja instantly turned into an afterimage and left the main hall. 10 minutes later, the citizens hiding in their homes saw a group of samurai and ninjas, surrounding a carriage pulled by 4 strange beasts, heading towards outside the city in a rather panicked manner. Urachi ran away? Several hours later, Shimatsuki Yasui and Shimatsuki Ashimaru, who had rushed from the Ringo and Hakamei regions with nearly 10,000 samurai, stormed into the flower capital and met up below Urachi Castle. That bastard Urachi actually abandoned even the flower capital. Shimatsuki Ashimaru, who had intended to eliminate the Kurizumi clan directly here, had a very ugly expression. Across from him, Shimatsuki Yasui remarked. This definitely wasn't Urachi's idea. That guy doesn't have the brain. There's nothing we can do now, let's continue heading to Kuri. It seems everything will have to be settled there. That's not bad either. Swiftly eliminate Kaido and Kurizumi clan, restore the Kazuki clan's position as general as soon as possible, and Wano country will return to how it used to be. Shimatsuki Ashimaru said heavily, his gaze filled with killing intent and determination. Sirs, may we join you? Just as they were preparing to set off again, a voice filled with a strong sense of oppression rang out, causing the samurai present to look over one after another. They saw a strong man walking slowly with powerful strides, bare-chested, with a large and tall build, flame-like blue hair and a goatee, and a blue tattoo adorned with pink flowers on his shoulders and back. He held a lit cigarette in his mouth. The powerful aura covering his entire body forced the samurai along the way to subconsciously move to the sides. Behind him followed a large crowd of samurai. However, the thuggishness on these people's faces made them look more like thugs and hoodlums than samurai. Master Swordsman Hyagro of the Flower. Seeing the newcomer, the two daimyo, Shimatsuki Yasui and Shimatsuki Ashimaru, also became serious. Because this man, the commander of the Flower Capital's underworld, possessed combat power comparable to theirs. Hyagro didn't waste any words and immediately walked in front of them, saying, "This old man has brought 200 subordinates and over 2,000 samurai from within the Flower Capital who are willing to serve the Kazuki clan. And this is Yokozuna rank sumo wrestler, Urashima. He is also willing to assist in the elimination of Kaido and the Kurizumi clan this time." This Yokozuna Urashima's body size was even larger than Hyagro's, but he didn't seem to have much muscle, looking like he was covered in large, round fat. "It is a great honor to meet your excellencies, the two daimyo. I am Wano country's #1 sumo wrestler. Please take care of me," Urashima said with a confident smile. "In this way, we truly have 10,000 samurai on our side. Adding the military strength from the Kibi and Udon regions, that's 16,000 samurai. The doomsday for Kaido and Urachi has finally arrived." Shimatsuki Yasui looked with blood-boiling excitement at the samurai who filled the entire Flower Capital street, stretching as far as the eye could see. The doomsday for Kaido of the Beasts and Kurizumi Urachi has finally arrived. The daimyo of Hakamei suddenly raised the katana in his hand and let out the most fervent roar, shouting, "For the Kazuki clan! For Wano country!" Boom! The next moment, all the samurai who heard the sound also strained their necks and responded loudly. For a moment, the entire Flower Capital was enveloped by this sentence, resounding through the entire azure sky. "For the Kazuki clan! For Wano country! For the Kazuki clan! For Wano country! For the Kazuki clan! For Wano country!" Similarly, this also shocked all the men, women, old and young within the Flower Capital. An elderly person among them listened to the surging shouts and muttered to himself inside his house. Is the sky of this country really going to change? This was 10,000 samurai. In their eyes, it seemed there was nothing that could resist such powerful combat power. Rumbling. Soon. Under the leadership of Shimatsuki Ashimaru, Shimatsuki Yasui, Hyagro of the Flower, and Yokozuna Urashima, 10,000 samurai rode their horse, and grandly rushed towards the Kuri region under the gaze of Mount Fuji. Rolling thick smoke was shaken up from the ground and rose into the sky. Wherever they went, the ground trembled with a great earthquake. The neighing of horse spread for 100 miles. Every single samurai in the large force, under the influence of the group effect, also became impassioned at this moment. They firmly believed that this battle, they would surely win. Chapter 248, Mihawk's Scheme and Mission. Kai. Do. O. Den. In the chaotic battlefield of Kuri region, Kaido, who had once again transformed into a blue divine dragon, and Kazuki Oden, holding twin swords and wrapped in a red aura, glared at each other as they charged forward, roaring and bellowing incessantly. Terrifying fighting intent and killing intent exploded from each of them. Blast breath. The giant dragon circling hundreds of meters high altitude opened its blood basin mouth and spewed out dense, crescent-shaped hotei that resembled Kama Itachi. Under the effect of the devil fruit ability, these hotei looked more like light blades. Each one emitted bright blue-white radiance and possessed astonishing speed. Oden two-sword style, gun, Oden slash. Kazuki Oden did not dodge or evade. He crossed Hidden Rain Village Nohaba Hidden Mist Village and Inma, hardened with armament haki, in front of him, transforming them into bright red beams that pierced through the hotei like lasers. Each hotei that was pierced utterly disintegrated behind him, turning into scattered light spots that gradually vanished. Dragon Twister. Kaido was not surprised by this outcome. After spitting out the hotei, he began to spin rapidly like a top, instantly creating 4 large dragon twisters on the spot. He completely disregarded the fact that this natural disaster like gale not only swept up a large number of samurai but also affected many of his own crewmates. For a moment, terrified screams rose and fell, spreading throughout the field. Similarly, this forced the approaching Kazuki Oden back. Immediately after, Kaido opened his dragon mouth again. This time, what gathered in his mouth was not wind, but a dazzling gunfire flash. Burrow breath. The next moment, a long column composed entirely of flame erupted, not only engulfing Kazuki Oden, who had leaped into the air, but also piercing through the massive battlefield where nearly 10,000 people were fighting, and incidentally melting down 2 distant mountains as well. So strong. Thousands of meters high altitude, Jian, standing on the warship deck of the floating warship, was astonished by Kaido's strength upon seeing the terrifying combat scene below. What's going on with Kaido's devil fruit ability? He has too many types of abilities. However, Mihawk's sharp gaze beside her was fixed tightly on Kazuki Oden. This was a great swordsman's desperate combat, which held considerable attraction for him. Although Rayleigh's combat against him could also be considered a great swordsman's fight to the death, the power difference between the two sides was too great, resulting in not much swordsmanship duel during the process. Watch carefully, this combat will definitely benefit us greatly. Okay. Hearing Mihawk's serious reminder, Jian quickly nodded and stopped speaking, beginning to concentrate on observing Kazuki Oden's every movement while fighting Kaido. This fight lasted from morning until evening. Although the outcome between the two was decided very quickly in the anime, in reality, Kaido, as his own mythical beast awakened user, was not weak enough to be defeated directly after being cut twice. Even though Kazuki Oden, relying on his top-tier combatant strength, carved terrifying bloody wounds onto the divine dragon, Kaido fully displayed the super life force and recovery power of his own awakened user. As expected, Kaido can't defeat Oden. Mihawk, overlooking everything from the floating warship, said this coldly. Below, no matter how much Kaido spewed gale, flame, or even lightning, he could only barely parry Kazuki Oden's twin sword slashes. You want that person to make an appearance? Jian asked softly. No. Mihawk shook his head and said calmly. It's still too early. I want Kaido to be completely defeated by Oden before sending him down for a big cleanup. Besides, not everyone is here yet. The moment his words fell, his hawk-eyes-like gaze suddenly glanced towards the flower capital direction. Looks like they'll be here soon. Jian followed Mihawk's gaze. From their elevated perspective, they could clearly see a large black shadow rushing towards the battlefield, covered in dust. Is that Kurizumi Orochi, Kurizumi Higurashi, Kurizumi Semimaru? They are our targets to capture alive. Mihawk said coldly. According to the mission he received, there were a few people who needed to be captured, such as Neko Meimoshi and Inu Arashi, the 2 Mink tribe members. Although they themselves didn't have much value, the Vivire cards they carried could point the way to us. Unfortunately, an accident occurred, and Kazuki Toki sent them to the future Wano country using her time ability. Then there were these 4 people from the Kurizumi family. Yes, 4. Another Kurizumi Kandra was pretending to slack off in the battlefield below. These vassals of Kazuki Oden had arrived several hours ago. However, their strength was still too weak at the moment, and they hadn't received much attention from Mihawk and Jian. And the reason why the world government wanted to capture alive these few Kurizumi family members was, Of course, because of the devil fruit abilities they possessed. Kurizumi Orochi, Zone Snake Fruit, Mythical Type, Yamata no Orochi Form User. Kurizumi Semimaru, Paramsha Barrier Fruit User. Kurizumi Higurashi, Paramsha Copy Fruit User. Kurizumi Kanjuro, Paramsha Brush Fruit User. Look, each one is a devil fruit with extremely high value abilities. In fact, it's not just them. Basically, there seems to be no useless fruit among the devil fruit users in Wano country. Take Kinemon's Paramsha Clothes Fruit, for example. It seems to just change someone's clothing, but the problem is that after wearing the clothes it changes, others truly won't recognize them. If this ability is used well, its effect is much stronger than the Copy Fruit, which can only transform oneself. There's also Shinobu's Paramsha Jaku Fruit, which can accelerate the ripening of things, or even cause decay, and the devil fruit eaten by the fox named Animaru, brought by Shimatsuki Ashimaru who is currently rushing over, is also a mythical zone. Besides these, there are the Zone Dog Fruit, Mythical Type, Akachi no Makami Form and the Paramsha Kibi Fruit, which haven't been eaten yet and are somewhere in Wano country. Below. Phew. Finally here. Kurizumi Orochi stepped out of the carriage, looking at the blue divine dragon in the distance displaying its might with wind, flame, and lightning in the air. He immediately felt a strong sense of protection. In his opinion, Kaido was invincible. As long as he was here, his personal safety and status would be absolutely guaranteed. Ha, the samurai brought by those daimyo seemed to be having a terrible time. Quick, go kill them all. Kurizumi Orochi's gaze couldn't clearly see the situation on Kaido's side, but he could see that the samurai force of the two daimyo, Fuzuki Amushibai and Yuzuki Tempura, were being brutally slaughtered by the beast pirates. There was nothing they could do. Although Kazuki Oden could fight Kaido to a point where he could only parry, the other samurai were still no match for the beast pirates. Only the future Okazeya 6 he brought could barely hold their ground by working together. Yes. Following Kurizumi Orochi's order, given with wild laughter, the more than 2,000 samurai surrounding the carriage roared in response and charged towards their fellow samurai who had their backs to them, with faces full of sinister smiles. Being attacked from two sides, kicking a man while he's down, how interesting did that look? Only the 5,000 ninja remained in place, because their mission was to protect the general of Wano country, and Kurizumi Orochi himself didn't want them to leave. After all, on a chaotic battlefield, how could he manage without enough guard around him? Kurizumi Higurashi said with a chuckle. Orochi, let's take a detour to the rear of the beast pirates. Don't forget, the main troops of the two Shimatsuki families are also rushing over from behind. Kurizumi Orochi finally stopped his arrogant laughter and quickly urged. Right, let's go quickly. Chapter 249, Samurai Killing Each Other. Blood covered the ground, dyeing the land of the Kuri region red. Looking at this chaotic scene filled with screams, fighting, and corpses, Ash Horidoji, who was also swinging his cleaver, felt as if he had returned to Kuri 14 years ago. Before Kazuki Oden arrived here, he was known as the most dangerous man in Kuri, and naturally had the most profound experience of Kuri at that time. Kuri back then was just like this, filled with the smell of blood, like a hellish land. Not only did the generals and daimyo completely abandon the management of this place, but they even intensified the situation by exiling criminals, thugs, and scum from various regions here. Every day and every night, people would die in brawls, duels, or assassinations. Kill. Die, you damn pirate. A bloodshot-eyed samurai to Ash Horidoji's right, completely disregarding the bloody wound on his left arm, roared as he climbed up from the ground. Splurt, but just as he was about to charge towards the beast pirate not far away, he suddenly felt a cold sensation in his back. Along with the blood flowing from the corner of his mouth, he lowered his head in disbelief to look at the blood blade that had pierced through his abdomen. How is this possible? Behind him, a samurai with a sneer on his face stood there. With a forceful pull, he withdrew the katana from the former's body, letting him fall powerlessly into the pool of blood. Get lost, samurai. But just as this person turned around to look for his next backstab target, an extremely violent roar of rage sounded behind him. He subconsciously turned his head and was surprised to see a large beast pirate charging towards him. Wait. I'm Lord Orochi's. The samurai's words were cut short as he was sliced in half by an axe. Immediately after, his head, which had just hit the ground, was stomped into the bloody mud. The situation on the battlefield was now very strange. Pirates were fighting samurai, and samurai were also fighting samurai. It was chaos. And it was getting more and more chaotic. The 2,000 samurai Kurizumi Orochi threw into the battlefield completely muddied the waters. Their backstabbing actions made the samurai, who were original copy united against a common enemy, become wary of each other. They were originally samurai from two different regions, Yudon and Kibi, and didn't know each other. Even samurai from the same region didn't necessarily know each other, especially in such a chaotic battlefield. The only way to distinguish friend from foe was the samurai attire they wore and the black leather clothes worn by the beast pirates. Now, even the samurai attire couldn't be used to identify allies. As for the beast pirates, it was even more impossible for them to distinguish which samurai were under Kurizumi Urachi's command and which were under the daimyo's command. The pirates, whose minds were filled only with killing, could only treat everyone equally and eliminate every single samurai in front of them. As a result, the beast pirates had no trouble distinguishing friend from foe, which caused their efficiency in cutting down samurai to rise rapidly. Relying on their strong physiques and the power of hockey, wherever they went, there was nothing but blood rain and dismembered limbs. A mere 1,000 or so pirates were actually slaughtering their way through a crowd of nearly 10,000 samurai. The most ridiculous thing was that even while being massacred like this, the samurai were still fighting each other. How could this happen? On the deck of the floating warship, Jian watched the samurai killing each other below, genuinely feeling pathetic, pitiful, and lamentable for them. To her, even if samurai were to die, they should die in frontal combat, not from a despicable backstab. In a way, Kurizumi Urachi has indeed helped the beast pirates, and in a sense, helped us too. Mihawk said, his arms crossed over his chest, calmly watching everything unfold. For him, who grew up outside of Marijoi's and constantly faced villains trying to steal his blade, he had long been accustomed to deception, lies, and betrayal. This was actually one of the reasons he didn't like partnering up or forming groups with people. On the contrary, swordsmen like Jian, who grew up in the nurturing environment of Marine headquarters, still carried noticeable naivety and childishness in their personalities. Just then, the two noticed again that another large, dark troops was approaching from a distance, bringing with it thick smoke. And this time, the scale of their numbers was several times larger than Kurizumi Urachi's previous force. That must be over 10,000. Jian covered her mouth in astonishment, exclaiming as she looked at the scene that could truly be described as covering the mountains and plains. With this, the Kuri region must have gathered 20,000 military strength. Shimatsuki Ashimaru, Shimatsuki Yasui, it seems the characters are all here now. Mihawk's sharp hawk eyes focused on Shimatsuki Ashimaru, who was spurring his horse forward, thinking to himself. Is this the direct descendant of Shimatsuki Rima? Whoa. At the same time, Shimatsuki Ashimaru, seeing the chaotic scene not far away, quickly pulled back on his warhorse's reins. He simultaneously waved backward to give the order to halt, shouting. Something's wrong with the situation. Hyagro of the Flower nodded, his expression grim, and said. Indeed, why are those samurai killing each other? If we charge in under these circumstances, we'll just become part of it. It must be Kurizumi Urachi's doing. At this moment, Shimatsuki Yasui pointed towards the rear of the beast pirates. Although nothing could be seen with the naked eye due to the battlefield where nearly 10,000 people were fighting in between, he could sense the aura of familiar individuals using observation hockey. There are only about 5,000 ninjas around him. As soon as he said this, everyone understood and showed expressions of anger, scorn, and contempt. Yokozuna Urashima, in particular, burst into curses. Urachi is truly despicable. How can someone like that be the general of Wano country? Shimatsuki Yasui also said with an angry expression. I've said it before, Kurizumi Urachi is just a big pest in the vast forests, vegetation, rivers, and villages of our Wano country. We'll go around. Shimatsuki Ashimaru was the only one whose mindset wasn't affected. He carefully observed the battle situation and the terrain and proposed. We'll split into two divisions and go around the battlefield from the left and right sides. First, we'll deal with Kurizumi Urachi and those ninjas, then we'll surround the entire battlefield, allowing the samurai from Kibi and Yudon regions to gradually withdraw from the battlefield, and then target Urachi's warriors and the beast pirates one by one. Alright. Shimatsuki Yasui immediately agreed, saying fiercely. Kurizumi Urachi must be left to me in the end. I will personally cut him down. For some reason, a strong killing intent suddenly surged in his heart. He felt that he wouldn't feel at ease unless he killed Kurizumi Urachi. In that case, I am willing to lend a hand to the daimyo of the Kamei. Yokozuna Urashima said gruffly. The group quickly finalized the operation plan. 10,000 samurai were divided into two troops of 5,000 troops each. Shimatsuki Ashimaru and Hyagro of the Flowers division headed to the left, while Shimatsuki Yasui's division headed to the right. They were like two large pincers, with the aura of enveloping the central battlefield. At the same time, this also attracted the attention and panic from Kurizumi Urachi's side. What should we do? What should we do? Damn Shimatsuki Ashimaru, damn Shimatsuki Yasui, Do they have to oppose me? These bastards. Traitors. Kurizumi Higurashi helplessly watched Kurizumi Orochi stamping his feet in anger and cursing from his luxurious carriage. He felt so tired. Stop cursing, prepare for combat. We have nowhere left to retreat. He also hadn't expected that the invincible Kaido would be unable to quickly defeat Kazuki Oden, resulting in them now facing a pincer attack from 10,000 samurai. As for the more specific situation, with Kurizumi Higurashi's strength, he couldn't see clearly. He had no idea that Kaido was not only unable to defeat Oden but was actually completely at a disadvantage. At this moment, Kurizumi Semimaru stepped forward and said, "I will go and block one side." Chapter 250, Oden's Roar and Rage. Following Kurizumi Semimaru's statement, Fukurikaju, leading 10 high-ranking members of the Mimowarigmi, also appeared in a flash. "General Sama, rest assured. As long as even one of us ninja remains alive, we will not let those rebellious samurai harm a single hair on your head." These ninja could be considered a prime example of blind loyalty. Regardless of who the general was, good or bad, they simply protected the general and acted according to orders. Of course, wasn't the loyalty of daimyo family like Shimatsuki Ashimaru towards the Kazuki family also a form of blind loyalty? The only difference was that the ninja's loyalty was directed towards the identity of the general, while the samurai's loyalty was directed towards the Kazuki clan's bloodline. It's worth mentioning that, strictly speaking, the Mimowarigmi referred to these 11 ninja, who were equivalent to vassals under a daimyo. The remaining 5,000 lower-level ninja were merely subordinates of the Mimowarigmi, equivalent to ordinary samurai. But this also proved one point: somewhere in Wano country, there must be a place specifically for training and cultivating ninja. Don't be in a hurry. Just as Kurizumi Semimaru and the Mimowarigmi were preparing to move out and engage the Shimatsuki family samurai force from both sides, a voice that could be described as a deep bass called out to them. "Lord Queen?" Kurizumi Higurashi, standing beside the carriage, looked in surprise as Queen, whose body size was large enough to rival a two-story building, walked over. It was somewhat amusing. With Queen's height of over 6 meters, he couldn't even be considered a giant in this world. His expression showed no sign of being affected by the near decapitation by Fuzuki Amushibai earlier. He still wore the cheerful, idiotic look. But no one present dared to underestimate Queen because of this. They had all witnessed how terrifying he could be when he got angry. "No need to rush, those samurai won't dare to attack you." "How so?" A look of confusion appeared on Kurizumi Semimaru's ugly, old hag-like face. Kurizumi Orochi, in the carriage, also looked at Queen with curiosity. "Because we have this woman in our hands." Queen completely disregarded Shimatsuki Ashimaru and Shimatsuki Yasui, who were about to bypass the battlefield on the left and right sides. He slowly lit a cigar and put it in his mouth, then moved his massive, house-like body aside, revealing Kazuki Toki, who had been captured by 2 pirates, to everyone present. "It's her." Kurizumi Semimaru looked in surprise at the blue-haired woman, whose entire body was bound by ropes and whose hands were cuffed with sea-stone handcuffs. Kurizumi Orochi, however, wore a lecherous expression, saliva even gathering at the corners of his mouth. So beautiful. Kazuki Toki's beauty, which could be called the greatest in Wano country, was simply an irresistible temptation for a lecher like him. But no one paid attention to Kurizumi Orochi's pathetic appearance at the moment. "Excellent, she's the perfect hostage." Kurizumi Semimaru grinned with excitement, then asked in confusion. "But why didn't you take her to Kazuki Oden?" Hey, our captain hates it when someone interferes with his combat." Queen curled his lip and exhaled a puff of thick smoke. Honestly, on this point, his view differed from Kaido's. In his opinion, as long as you win, any means are acceptable. "Alright, hang her up. Let's see if Shimatsuki Ashimaru and the others dare to charge forward." Right. Kurizumi Orochi nodded repeatedly. Although Kazuki Toki's beauty was very tempting, he also understood that only by preserving his own life and power could he enjoy the service of more beautiful women. Soon. With the ninja's swift and decisive actions, Kazuki Toki was hung on a tall wooden pole, displayed for everyone on this curry battlefield to see. As expected, the gazes of Shimatsuki Ashimaru and the others, who were getting closer, instantly focused on Kazuki Toki. Even Kinemon and the others, who were fighting in the melee, had their expression changed drastically upon seeing this scene. Lady Toki. But immediately, these vassals of Kazuki Oden thought of another question. What about Momonosuke-sama and Hori-sama? Whoa. Shimatsuki Ashimaru's expression turned ugly as he pulled back his warhorse again, roaring angrily at Kurizumi Orochi. "You actually use a woman as a human shield." The latter's shameless bottom line once again refreshed this Ringo daimyo's 3 views. Gorura. Kurizumi Orochi displayed his arrogant behavior of a small person getting their way to the fullest, standing on the luxurious carriage and pointing the musket in his hand at Kazuki Toki on the wooden pole. This is Kazuki Oden's wife. If you dare to take another step forward, I will personally shoot her dead. Hearing this, Shimatsuki Yasui and the others on the other side could only stop their horses, looking at each other at a loss. They really hadn't expected such a situation to arise. Lord, the samurai from the Yuzuki family and Fuzuki family are about to collapse. What do you think? A vassal behind Shimatsuki Ashimaru leaned over and reminded him in a low voice. The former turned his head to look at the central battlefield. Indeed, except for a few of Kazuki Oden's vassals who were still fighting fiercely, most of the samurai had already fallen on the bloody ground. Where are the two daimyo, Fuzuki Amushibai and Yuzuki Tempura? We haven't found. The vassal awkwardly scratched his head. Shimatsuki Ashimaru ordered. Then send people to search, even if it's just their remains. Yes. Receiving the order, the vassal quickly turned his warhorse and headed towards the rear of the troops. Hyagro of the Flower, who was nearby, was still thinking about how to break the current stalemate. But no matter how he looked at it, there was no way. Unless someone could rescue Lady Toki, or they simply ignored her fate. In fact, as a gang boss, Hyagro was more inclined to ignore Lady Toki. In his opinion, whether she was Kazuki Oden's wife or not, she was ultimately just a woman. Surely they couldn't just surrender for the sake of one woman, could they? But Hyagro also knew that with his identity, he couldn't make this decision, nor could he say these words. Oden two-sword style, Togentatsuka. Just as the atmosphere completely fell into a stalemate. A roar that almost echoed throughout the entire Kuri region swept across the battlefield like thunder. Everyone's gaze was forcibly drawn towards it. Those with weaker strength could only see a red meteor as fast as lightning, flashing past the Azure Dragon's body in the blink of an eye and rushing towards the sky. However, powerhouses like Shimatsuki Ashimaru and Hyagro of the Flower could slightly make out Kazuki Oden's movements. It was still the classic twin swords in a cross shape, but this time, it left a cross-shaped cut on the Azure Dragon's body that was almost deep enough to see bone. A large amount of blood gushed out from it. Even someone as strong as Kaido let out a bone-chilling, mournful scream, crashing down from the sky amidst his wails. The surging air current and smoke and dust kicked up by the impact knocked down a large number of his own crewmates and samurai who were fighting in the melee.